From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm one of the hosts for this episode, and my name is Bill. Who's hosting with me?
I'm Vicki.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Ben.
Ben's here.
Ben Dawson.
Is this a Dominating with Dawson?
No, there's another reason I had to be here.
There is. We have a guest, a long talked about, long sought after guest who, once we asked him, said yes. So, another person with questionable judgment, but we'll take him. We have the author of You Suck at Racing, Ian Korf. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So one of the things that people have to put up with is Bill's story time. So our son wasn't feeling well, so he was in the hospital, and he's on our race team. And so me being a father, I had to get him the You Suck at Racing book before he got out of the hospital to hand to him, just to have a general jab, because we have to who's better. But I do appreciate the title. But besides the title, it's actually a very good book, and it's quite helpful.
Thanks. Well, when I was writing it, and also the blog that started before that, like a couple of years before that, I started a blog. It's not really done to help other people. It was more done for my own sort of purposes. And it's sort of like, I think it's kind of nice that other people like it. That's not necessarily intended for, like, if I wanted lots of people to read it, I probably wouldn't have called it You Suck at Racing. But I don't care if anybody reads it, it's like, but I think that's part of my appeal to it, is that, like, I don't advertise the book. I don't advertise the website. I just don't care enough. But if somebody finds some utility in it, I mean, that's like a bonus.
You say all that, but I have met somebody who knew who I was because of your book. Because I guess I'm an intro. So I'm like, oh, you got from that book? I was like, oh yeah, it's out there. It's out there for sure.
Oh, it's funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like nothing opens doors more than writing a book about shit you don't know about. I think that's.
I could have a multi-volume set if I did that, but
yeah, I mean, the people I've met, and stuff. It's fun.
It's awesome.
Oh,
Jen just unplugged.
I'll
there
start.
She goes.
I'll start. Sorry. There's a lot of background noise here, so I have to keep going on mute. So, Ian, can you, who are you? Give us a brief introduction of who you are so we can be a little bit familiar with you.
All right. Well, I'm 53, and I say that because a lot of people at times, they don't know my name, my age. Like, I play some online games, and people are like, you don't sound 53. It's like, well, what does it sound to be 53? I don't know, but
we may have crossed paths.
Something like Mr. Magoo or something.
Anyway, so I am 53. I started picking up motorsports as something I was actually interested in as when I was, I think, probably 45. So I came to this thing pretty late. And it's like one of a bazillion hobbies. I have a lot of hobbies. I would say that, like, my life might be collecting hobbies. I don't know. I seem to collect too many of them. And then what happens is they go on the back burner, then they come back, and they sort of like, they cycle in and out over a series of 5 or 6 years. But racing has actually stayed with me for quite a long time. So I guess I must really like it because of that. In my day job, I'm a professor, and I work with computers and biology, and it's a pretty great gig. But I like to also have lots of other kinds of things. Like at night, I do like whatever kind of hobbying I'm doing. I also sometimes work at night. So I don't do a lot of like TV watching or stuff like that. I'm always working on something. I'm always got for me personally, there's always a book project or something or other. It's like, I don't spend a whole lot of time like idle, or like, I can't sit around and watch a movie. I can't watch movies. I can't watch whatever. I have to be actively doing something.
It's like Vicki, her leg doesn't sit still even if we're sitting at a movie. So
No, it's true.
it's like
If I'm not yelling at the screen. So how did you get into it? I mean, how did you find your way to racing?
Well, I started with my brother. He said, let's do this 24 hours of lemons thing. It's like $500 for a car. And I was like, 500 divided by 6 people, that's $83. I can do that. $83, I'm in. And then later on, I realized like my neck brace would be $600, but by that time I was in too deep. And so, yeah, ever since the first time I drove a car on track, I was in too deep. It was just like, oh, this is what my life's been missing. And so, but it all started with my brother's bad idea. As many things happen, start with my brother's bad ideas. But once the racing, once I got bitten by that bug, I was in deep.
Now, what circus did he start you out in? Or did you guys start out?
First time I was, first track day was at Thunderhill. The 3 mile at Thunderhill.
What circuit?
The
series.
Oh, what series? It was just a track day. I mean, my first thing was just a track day. But then I think probably I was in a lemons race probably by the time I was in my third track. I probably did 2 track days before I ended up in a lemons race.
Yeah, you guys had very little like on track experience before you just rolled out to your first race, right?
Yeah. And after that first race, we still had very little track experience because I think we only got about a half hour in the car.
Right. Yeah. The car was pretty miserable in that first one, from what I understand. Because I think I came for the second. I was maybe for the second or third one. Is when I joined the team. We burned out some bearings in the first race pretty early, and so we all got in the car for about a half an hour, and then promptly after that, we spun some bearings, and that was the race. And then we kept doing it over and over again. Same car, spin bearings every time. I was like, that car broke our hearts. Those little motors were so good till they were gone, though, right?
Right. I had some absolutely terrible memories of racing an MR2. It was like, It was a terrible, terrible race car because so many parts of it are fragile. On the other hand, Ben and we both had some of the best time we ever had racing. Yep. Was when we went to the track and the suspension, like the half shaft broke on the right-hand side and we had to replace it. So we went through the paddock looking for there's a couple MR2s at the time. There aren't any anymore. They're all gone. Nobody races an MR2 in lemons anymore. But at that time, there were probably 3 or 4 of them in the paddock. And we were driving like an 88 or something, 87. We found one from an 85 or 86. And the geometry is not the same. It's not the same length. Yeah. We didn't know that. But we just just jammed the thing in there, hammered it in. And we had a mechanic on our team, Thomas Ulrich, who was able to make parts from different cars fit with a hammer and pick it out on track. And the track and the car was actually not straight. You couldn't drive it straight in a straight line. It lurched to the side. Every single time you did anything, it would lurch on you. The only time it was stable is if it was leaning over in a right-hand corner and all the weight was on the left-hand side of the car. And then you could actually drive it around the corner. But other than that, it was trying to kill you the entire time.
It was so murdery. It was. I tried to kill me coming down pit road. I was like, yeah, here we go.
And it was the most amazing experience. Like we're going door to door with another car with our car lurching to the side every 3 seconds. You're like sawing the steering wheel on the straight to keep it from going crazy on the straight.
Well, the first driver who drove it after the change came in and goes, "Oh, it's all loose in the front end." And this is a guy we were already starting to. He wasn't somebody who was on the team for a long time. He didn't have a lot of credibility with us because he'd been telling us he brought Bobby Rahal into the sport and all this kind of stuff. We were like, okay, but he goes, "It's all loose in the front end." I'm like, all right, this chick got to know what he's talking about. Let me get out there. You can't be loose in the front end because he was saying it's the same way a car is when it's oversteering, but it was doing it at the front. Like a car cannot do that. It did. That thing was all over the place. I had never been to Sears Point. And I knew it pretty well from Sims. I had never been to Sears Point, and I never put a wheel off that whole stint. And I still think I passed more cars than I got passed by. No,
you passed a lot of cars. Then I got in the car afterwards, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is the worst, most horrible car," and I'm having an amazing time. So then I came in, and I have an identical twin brother, and he comes over to me, and he's like, "That's not the line you're supposed to take." I was like, "Why don't you get in the car and tell me about it?" So he goes out, and he doesn't even complete one lap. He just goes out, he comes right back, and he's like, "My life is actually too precious for that. I'm not."
Well, that's 3 people we know and 1 with good sense. So, but that explains why you're on our podcast and he's not.
Well, that car was so crazy, and I didn't have any frame of reference. So they were all like, "Oh, it's so much worse than it was the first time we raced." And I was like, "It was pretty terrible this time too." I mean, I thought that's how it was. I was like, "This thing is a wild race car, but I'm ready to go to town."
I think actually like driving really terrible cars might be the most fun that you can do on a racetrack.
Yeah.
Like I drove a 80s Celica with a Ford 5-liter in it and an automatic transmission with OEM brakes. And you could apply your brakes once per lap because otherwise they would overheat. And
Choose wisely.
And it was the first time I drove it, I was like, this is terrible. It's a death trap. And then after I came to grips with how terrible it was, I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. It's so terrible.
It's a momentum car, whether it is or not, because you have no brakes.
So what cars are you racing now?
I have a 2007 Yaris as my main race car. And I would challenge anybody to race on a cheaper budget than I do. It consumes less than 4 gallons per hour at full tilt. Brakes are, everything is so cheap on the car. It bounces off other cars. It's been hit and just bounces off. There's like zero maintenance. I don't do anything in the car, just put gas and brake pads and, change oils every once in a while like that. But it's like, so if you were to look at our spreadsheet, I can show you our spreadsheet, like our cost spreadsheet. I can bring it up on screen right now if you want to see it. It's like, it's here. I'll go get it so that, because you probably aren't going to believe me when I show you my spreadsheet. Like this is like every race we have a spreadsheet of costs, and this one honestly was maybe it's under.
I can tell you how he found the car.
Yeah.
He got this car through a very useful East Coast ally who knew he was looking for something like that. It happens that my wife's board study partner was getting ready to drive her 2007 Yaris out to the West Coast and hopefully sell it. And I was like, let me tell you about this man, Ian.
So here's our spreadsheet over here on costs. Everybody pays their own registration fees, some money for transport, pads, whether I budgeted for pads, rotors, I budget for things like a little bit of miscellaneous wear and tear. And this is the 5-person expenses per person, $114.89.
Wow.
So
added for splitter repair.
Yeah, added $10. So like, yeah, the splitter broke. This one guy, he broke the splitter, so I charged him $10
plywood.
for it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Plywood
that was for the plywood.
Yeah, we all build splitters out of plywood, but nobody's super fancy. Okay.
Is there another choice?
Everybody builds it and then rips it off the very first race. I've seen it happen twice. It's happened to my team. I've seen it happen to somebody else in person.
Yeah. I mean, ours got hit and then we were cutting a tire with it. And so I was like, well, it's got to yank it off. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I never got to try it out, but word was that it changed handling. That was the word.
Well, we had aero on our car for about a half a day of a race where somebody snatched it off and down through hog paint and ran over it. And we had rear aero, which is super useful without the front.
Yeah. So what type of racing history have you tried? Is it
well, so when I purchased that Yaris, I had initially purchased it in fake for my son. I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy you a car. And of course, probably the entire time was I'm going to turn that into a B-spec. And my idea was I was going to race it in every single form of racing that's possible. I was going to do autocross and hill climb and SCCA road racing, SCCA rally racing, endurance racing, you name it, I was going to do it in that car. And I actually have. I've done it. I've taken it to a rally school. I've done autocross with it, Lemons, Chump Car, Lucky Dog, SCCA. I've had it on dirt and rocks and shit like that. So I've driven on sort of everything. So, but I don't actually drive. Weird thing is if I went through all my driving, like I might have like a log of every time I hit the track and how much time I spend and stuff like that. My total number of hours of aggressive driving is well under 100. Yeah, I don't drive that much, as it turns out. I'm not like any one year, I don't actually spend that much time on track. I don't. Weirdly enough, I like to do different. I'd like that if you were to ask me like what's my dream year, it would probably hit 5 or 6 tracks I've never been to. That's my dream year. I don't need to do any more driving than that in a year. I'm not like I don't need to race. I don't need to, compete against other people or whatever else. But I do like the experience of going to a track I've never been to and trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
That's one of the thrills I have left in the sport is getting to go to a new course to check it out.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't driven with us yet, then. That's a thrill unto itself.
I'm so ready.
or yeah, here's another ideal year. Drive 6 different terrible cars on
Sure.
any track. I don't know. That would also be great. Yeah.
That's just a normal year for us.
Yeah. Well, that sounds how.
So do you have any goals, or would that be your like a bucket list, or is that your bucket list?
Do I have any goals? I guess
Goals and dreams.
racing goal. What are my racing goals? To get through it without injury. Like I had fun with the motorcycle for a while, and I don't motorcycle anymore. And I look back, I was like, yeah, that was fun, and I didn't kill myself doing it. So I think the same thing would be true of like racing. Like, yeah, I could look back on it and then be like, yeah, that was fun, and I didn't hurt myself, or I didn't do too much. I didn't hurt anybody else. That would be my goal, is that I get in and out of it without too much of a fuss.
Yeah, everybody's like, Bill, why don't you drive motorcycles? And I'm like, because I'd like it.
Exactly. That's why
I know I
do
love it too much.
Oh my God. No. If I had a motorcycle on a track, no, I won't do it. I will not do that, because I would like it way too much.
Mario does it, doesn't he?
He does, and he likes it way too much. He gets there, he's like, oh, you know what? I just might do motorcycling instead of cars. I don't know. He's like, he has so much fun with it.
One of my motorsports goals is to go race his Aero Miata with you and him sometime in the next couple of years.
There you go.
We're doing it.
So how did you and Ben manage to find each other in this vast series of racing?
I have my idea version of that, and I don't know if it's the same as Ben's. I
want to hear yours.
I believe Ben advertised on the Lemons forum that he was new in town and looking for a team, and we were like, yeah, sure. And then we sent him our driver's sort of contract thing, and he was like, that was pretty funny. Let's meet, or something to that effect, because our driver's contract was sort of like, well, we're all here to have fun and don't break shit. I don't remember.
I have a slightly different recollection. I had just moved out to Davis, California, and I had like no idea. I had a nearly spec Miata at that point. It was already caged. I guess it was mostly spec Miata, but I was just like, I'm not going to bring it out. I didn't want to ship it out, so I figured I would just try to find a car I could do track days with and do some instructing just to see a bunch of tracks. But I was like, I just done my first wheel-to-wheel race with Chump on VR North. I think it was 2012 when I moved out there. So then I got out there. I was like, I would really like to try to find a group of people to compete with. And I found this. We were living in Davis, California, and there's a Davis Motorsports Club Facebook page. And I believe I joined that and saw something from Ian saying like, hey, we're trying to race and find people to do that. And I think I kind of came up not knowing how much experience these guys had. I was like, guys, I've done some kart racing. I've done a bunch of track days, and I've been instructing for a few years. And I've done one wheel-to-wheel race, and they're like, that's a million times more stuff than we've done. We'd love to meet you. I think I came over to their shop on a Saturday and started hanging out, and was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah, that sounds like the other half of the story, right? Yeah, we look at you and like, you've actually been on track and raced stuff. Oh my God.
Yeah, so that's how we got started. When I got there, they had an MR2, first gen MR2 that was brown. Painted like Noah's Ark, and it had a huge boat prow on the front. Like
it wasn't just a prow; it was built all the way around it. It was,
not just a prow, like
all the way around.
Yes. It was pretty serious, and you could not see out the front, especially some of these places like at the Sears Point, these uphill blind turns were really exciting for them. I think the first race they had punched a bunch of like hole saw holes inside the hull, so you could kind of look through it. Is that right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah, like you could literally, when you go over a certain type of hills, you couldn't see it until you came down on the other side, and you just hope you didn't hit anybody when you were traversing the crest or something.
Yeah,
it's like a bring your own Laguna Seca.
Yeah, exactly. So I know my first race with these guys, we kind of retooled it as a fishing boat and painted it blue and white. And we got the car going a little bit better. I think on the Sunday of that race, like we had to go back on and get the car even better on Sunday, and ended up having a pretty fun race that first weekend. I was like, I'm going to stick with these guys and get some more racing while I'm out here. And while we were racing, we got to go run a few different tracks. We ran Laguna Seca and Thunder Hill a few times. Sears Point, yeah. So I didn't expect to get to do that much competition out there. And I felt very lucky to have found Ian and learned a lot from him.
Well, learn a lot from me, haha.
Yeah. So, what part of the race team was your responsibility or position? I mean, what do you
we tried to run it as everybody contributes equally. You know, there's like those egalitarian teams where it's like everybody pitches in the same number of hours and money and everything else. And we tried to then say, well, people couldn't make it out and do the hours. So like, well, you can pitch in more money or whatever. And it just turned into like this nightmare of like, whatever. And so eventually what happened was, for the better, is everybody left me with the car, and I had to do everything myself. And then it was like, I didn't have to have any arguments. I just had to pay all the bills. And so then they just come back and race, and I just pay the bills, and then I have to have arguments. And it's like, I'm coming out ahead.
Oh, so you basically manage the team and people pay you now.
Yeah. $150.
It was, I definitely poured many of my own tears and beers down into the open cylinder holes on that MR2. Like we tortured ourselves trying to race a car. We could have done it a lot easier looking back. Definitely easier routes to have taken.
Yeah, like get a car that was actually reliable. That was a terrible car.
Like back then, like even like, I guess this is talking about 8 years ago, but my economies of scale were just not even thinking. Like I was like, there's just no way I could ship a Miata out here. Like it would have made so much more sense. We would have had so much more fun if I had just spent a few $100, shipped my Miata out there, and we could have just screwed around with it the whole time. But hindsight is 2020, and I got a better sense of because before I got out there, I didn't really understand that you could go to a track and, oh sure, you drive the car. I don't care who it was. Like I was pretty precious about who got in and drove the Miata. So it was a real eye opener to get out there and just see everybody kind of just jumping in and out of different cars. Like, oh, when I got back to the East Coast with my car, it was a lot more like that with me at a track. Like, oh, you want to go drive it? Knock yourself out. So I learned a lot more openness at the track with Ian.
Yeah, we've always been that. Our team has always been pretty much pretty casual. Yeah, we've never been that serious. I think there was a couple of times. Well, it was like one of our first races. We came in 9th overall.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that
in the MR2, and which is, it's got like a 10-gallon gas tank or whatever. We came in 9th overall in a race with like 185 cars in it, and we're like, wow, we got a top 10 finish, and we ran like 6 people in the car per day. Like maybe we could do really well in this game and those words of like, hey, let's try and do well. I think that ended up with those expectations, meaning we didn't have as much fun later after that. But then we learned later on not to have those expectations and just to embrace failure in all its forms, and then had a lot more fun.
So 2020 was a bust, obviously. Do you have any like plans or hopes for 2021 as far as racing, or you just gonna?
Oh, I don't know. I think part of my motto of 2021 is, and you thought 2020 was bad.
Yeah. I don't have huge expectations for this one being a whole lot better.
But I think actually the motorsports people, there's a lot of events that are being run, right? Like they canceled so many events, but people are figuring out how to be safe in them, both HPD and also, endurance racing. People have been pretty safe with that. I think there's been a number of races that have been run successfully without being spreader events. People, you can stay apart from each other in a paddock and on a racetrack and stuff like that. So I feel like there's probably going to be quite a bit of racing happening this year. Of course, all it takes is a big upswing in some state for them to cancel stuff. But I feel like people are getting better at it. And if COVID was to stick around for, like 5 years or something terrible like that, people would figure out how to hold events in those kinds of situations.
Were you able to do any races this year?
Did 2 events. I did or 3 maybe. I did one HPD event where I went up to a track. I was they were running Thunderhill in the backwards direction on the west side. And I was like, oh, I've never run it backwards. Yeah. I'm going to go up and do that. And then on my first session out, I melted a tire. I like totally destroyed a tire. And so brand new RS Pro, 595 RS Pro. This is like their new fast 200 treadwear tire that they came out with. It's supposed to replace the 595 RS RR. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try these things out. And so I stuck that on my Hyundai Elantra automatic.
Hey, all right.
Which was just like, this is my, I use it for delivering meals to old people's and meals on. It's my Meals on Wheels car right now. Mm-hmm. But I took that out on track with some nice tires on it. And I came in after one session and it was just like, it looked like it was attacked by a shark. I mean, I'm surprised it still holds air in it. Anyhow, so I only got one session in there. I did one coaching day. And it was after it was so much ash on the ground that I went onto the skid pad and I was like the first person on the skid pad and I disrupted all the ash that I was just collected in my lungs and I couldn't breathe the rest of the day.
Wow.
those are two events early. Then I didn't do anything until November. We did a lucky dog race in November at Thunderhill, and just happens is my car number 3 that I gave away, which would be the Miata 581. Ben's driven that one. I gave that away to
Jeff
a team.
have it now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And those guys were at the race and they were racing and they had all sorts of problems with differential and all sorts of stuff going wrong in it. And so their drivers ended up driving our car, and we put 8 people in our car on Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah. We had 8 stints on Sunday, but we all had a good time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It was
a lot of fun.
I think we've done 6 or 7. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, you meet some great people by doing that. It's like
Sure.
I met some really cool people in those kinds of situations.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't regret it ever. But that was the only race event we did. And honestly, how many I got less than a half an hour on track. On Sunday morning, I was the first driver and I went out there and they threw a yellow and I was like, this is going to be a long yellow. I might as well just come in. And they had so many yellows in that race that the track said, look, you have to stop the race. We can't, there's so many yellow flags passing under yellows right now that we can't write them down fast enough. And so they called, they red flagged the race.
Wow.
Brought everybody in and said, look, it was crazy. It was an unusual race.
Was there?
And where was this at?
It was at Thunderhill, and it's partly unusual because the 25 hour wasn't held this year. So usually there's the 25 hours of Thunderhill that's run by NASA Work, and they weren't running that. And so some of the 25 hour teams came to Lucky Dog. And so we had like Specky 46s and Porsche Cayman whatevers and GT3 Porsches and crap like that on the track with us.
I'm sure Kathy's hair was purpler than normal.
Yeah. Kathy's so amazing. I think anybody who knows her it's just like infinite respect for someone who can take that much shit with a smile on her face and do all this stuff for everybody. It's like the things that she does for everybody so we can go racing. I can't believe she does it, but thank God for her.
Absolutely.
So if you this most recent time, I'm just kind of curious, like gossip style, was there like one subset of racers doing most of the passing under yellow? Who do we watch out for?
No.
My first Lucky Dog race.
No, it was they had to shut the damn thing. It was everybody.
It was everybody.
That's not normal.
No, it was a strange circumstance. I think a lot of times they're not, I don't know. It wasn't always
my experience. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go
I was just gonna say my experience with AER from what I've seen in a couple of races in person is the guys with the higher end stuff, like the guys who will show up with a TCR car or like a factory BMW race car, seem to also be the ones, or old Exit IMSA stuff, are the ones who are most likely to wad it up and be like, I've already got another one coming from the factory. So that's just my AER experience.
Yeah, the dangerous people. The dangerous people are not the noobs. The complete noobs are usually not a problem, and also the highest, the pointy end of it are not a problem because they understand like how to take care of the car. The dangerous stuff is the stuff in the middle. It's
Kill
like,
zone.
yeah, the intermediates are the people who are the people to worry about. You identify those people on track and stay away from them.
So speaking of those, we're really committed to getting new people onto the track. So do you have any tips to get people out of their sofa and from out in front of their television to get them out onto the track?
That's a really good question because there are so many people who are car enthusiasts. But then if you ask how many of those people have actually ever taken their super fancy sports car on track, it's so few. Almost nobody wants to drive on track. I mean, they'll do an autocross. There's a lot of people who will do autocross, but the dilution from street driving to autocross, then to actual track driving, and then to racing, it just, I don't know how you get people like that. How do you get people who are excited about cars on a racetrack racing other people? Boy, that's tough. I don't know. I don't know why they don't. I mean, Ben, like it doesn't make any sense to you, does it? Like if you had a car, how would you not be racing?
Exactly. It's so far from my mindset. Like all I want to do is race all the time. So I can't even imagine talking to somebody who doesn't. Like no. What's wrong with you?
It's got 4 wheels in it and it goes under its own power. Please let me race it.
Exactly. Like I can do it faster than you. Let me show you. That's all I want to do.
Move over on that lawnmower. It's mine.
I would race the hell out of a lawnmower.
But I wasn't. I have to say I wasn't that way though until I got on track. Before that, like if I was talking about 10 years ago, a car was for me to get from one place to another. And the kind of optimization I did was fuel mileage. Like how what's the best fuel mileage I could get in the car?
It
I
was
didn't think about how,
it was an appliance.
yeah, it was an appliance. And so until I actually got my first taste of driving on a track, it wasn't really that exciting. And I'd done things a little bit like autocross. I mean, I went to a high performance driving school with my friends at one point in time. My brother and a couple of friends, we went to a Skip Barber high performance driving school at Laguna Seca, where they didn't let us drive the track. We just drove around in the parking lot. It's like pay $1,500 to drive around in the parking lot for 3 days. No, I shit you not.
Get out of here.
Yeah, $1,500 and you drive around a parking lot for 3 days with around cones and other stuff. And that did not, I was like, yeah, it's kind of fun, but it didn't make me want to get on the racetrack. But actually driving, the first time I drove around a racetrack, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, we really don't care if it's, just driving on a back road or going autocross. And we just want to see people like enjoy the fun that can be had by driving their car and realize that it can be fun. And it's not just go get groceries.
Yeah, I guess I've never had fun on a back road. I've never had fun doing anything like that's not fun for me to drive on a back road. Like I've never ever taken my car up into like the hilly parts and go, hey, let's go drive from the hills or whatever. I did that on a motorcycle, but I've never done that in a car. Unless all four wheels are sliding and there's an element of, if I don't do the right thing, I'm going to die, then it's not really worth me doing. And I would never do that on a public road. I would never actually take a chance of hitting somebody's dog or whatever else on a public street. So it holds no interest to me to drive my car anywhere except on the track, or except maybe dirt. If I found dirt, then I would do it. Like there's a sort of dirt area around here and I would do something like that, but it had to be a closed course or, it has to be like a park for off-road vehicles or something.
Yes. Crossing the yellow line on a public road is no bueno.
I know other people who do it. For me, I don't do that. No. I'd like to say it's because I'm socially conscious, but it's probably because I'm just like a wimp and I don't want to take those kinds of chances.
Well, I mean, for me also part of it is I've been to the right place to do it. I'm like, I can't imagine going from a real racetrack where we know how to compete and do it safely to be like, yeah, I'm going to go run these canyon roads like an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
So I guess what you got to do, I guess to get people also, but I did go-karting and that didn't translate to me also. Like I did go-karting and when I was doing go-karts, it never thought like, oh, go-karting, therefore I will drive a race car. No, it never even, that didn't make the connection either. It wasn't until I was actually in my own car on a racetrack that I ever really got, for me, that I got the bug. All these other little steps along the way were just sort of like, yeah, it's kind of fun, but if I don't do that for another 5 years, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Ian, like I said, we have your book. We actually have a few copies of your book because I couldn't find one, and when I can't find something, I'll just order another one. Vicki and I have different ways of cleaning, and she puts them in one spot, and I'm like, that's not where it goes, and I just can't find it. But it's okay.
I heard she makes piles of stuff everywhere, all around the house. I don't know.
Ben, I'm trying to get out of the bathtub at night, man.
You try to get away from that?
And you may come racing with us, but you might be sleeping in the bathtub in the RV. But
apparently that's my superpower.
Sorry, Ian. This is going back a few podcasts when Bill put his foot, well, probably both feet, in his mouth badly. So I guess for you to have written the book, you must have had some big takeaways that you're trying to convey. Did you go through some of those?
Yeah, well, I had some takeaways. Some of the takeaways, when I think about it, I think about novices. So that book was really for novices. I sometimes think about novices and sometimes I think about intermediates because they're really different things that you're trying to get across to different people, right? Like depending on the person's ability, you would describe the racetrack to them or driving in different ways. And I wanted to do something for the novice drivers because like every book that you get is like, famous racers talking about how to become a race car driver, whatever like that. And it's like, where's the book about like how to just not suck at it? And so that's what I wanted to write. It was just sort of the basics of like how to get started and not be terrible and how to be safe about it. But, and so that's what that was about. And the blog started out as being more about safety because I cared a lot about safety and like, why are people such idiots on track?
But also, real quick before you move on from the blog, you did it as like a look at these people crashing, like ha ha ha. So there's a little bit of humor to it. It's usually
absolutely. It was
not
very
terrible stuff. Yeah, it's full of snark, but also above all the snark was like, here's what happened. Here's why he did it. This guy was waving his buddy on track and he missed the thing that was coming up. Like it was all about, how to be looking in the right place, how to be kind of getting the car going in the right way. So you could go to enjoy the snark, which I do every week, but then also there's great information in there. But very early in the series, there's a whole lot of bloopers and crashes that you can learn a lot from as a beginning racer.
Yeah, it was all bloopers and crashes in the beginning. The first 100 posts are just crash analysis about this is what the person did wrong. And these are like, and so I was studying. The reason why I was studying crashes, because on our team, we were looking at things like, how many laps does a person get in? And the number of laps is partly dependent on how fast you drive the car, but it's more dependent on if you got a black flag or not. And so I was like, well, how do you minimize black flags? Well, by identifying all the different kinds of crashes that you can get in and making sure you're not the person in that crash. And so I was able eventually to sort of come up with sort of a big catalog. I have hundreds of YouTube videos saved that I've not posted yet about all the different ways to crash your car. No, not many, man.
I can't tell you how many times I can't tell you how many times I've come off a race weekend and had to send Ian a clip like, this is one for you suck at racing right here. But
yeah, true. So some of the things I would say is like most of the time when people inflict injury upon themselves, it's because they ran off the track. It's like people, when they run off the track, nobody teaches you how to go off a track and come back on a track without dying. And actually what it means, like you can't have your wheels turned to the side when you go off a racetrack. Like if they're turned to the side, you will start spinning. And if they come back on and they're turned to the side, you have to literally go put your wheels straight when you're going off and when you're coming back on. And people who don't understand that, and it's not like what happens is you're off the track and you start turning the wheel more because it's not doing anything. And then suddenly your tires hit asphalt and then you're suddenly sideways. I mean, that's a big crash. And so being able to train yourself for terrible situations is something that we don't generally get to do, but I think is actually super important. So like learning how to drive your car off the track and back on, where do you learn that? And yet it's super important because somebody might force you off the track. Yeah. Oh, we don't learn it. Where else? Where can you learn it? Where do they say, here, why don't you drop two wheels in the grass and then drive around the racetrack with 2 wheels in the grass the whole time? That would teach you some things.
You know what? It's like being thrown in the sandbox with bigger kids. Yeah. You're just going to get smacked around a lot.
Yeah. But but at 100 miles an hour, that would be pretty terrible. And so you don't really want that to happen. And so
yeah, but how like literally, how do you do it with
go off track
neatly?
Yeah.
Besides going off track and you just because trying to manifest it without accidentally doing it, because usually when you accidentally do it, you're usually in a panic and you're
right. If you do it accidentally,
that's the big unknown.
If you did it accidentally and it was the first time you ever went off track, it's going to be luck that gets you through it, not your experience that gets you through it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what that number one thing about self-inflicted harm is when you go off track. And so making sure you never go off track is like one of the most important things I would say for people. Yeah. And then
we don't learn it at Charlotte. Apparently that's what Bill's trying to say.
Another thing I would say, one more thing is that like, if I was telling someone, first person to ever been on, like noobs that come and race with me, it's like, when you go out there, it's like race with people, don't race against them. That's the number one thing I would tell people.
Yes.
It's like,
that's huge.
Yeah, we're all in a race together. Don't race against people on your team. Like I just did a 202. Well, I'm going to do a 201. Don't do that either. Like racing against other people, then you start focusing on like times and then your attention starts going to things away from who's trying to kill me right now, because there's like 80 other on the track trying to kill you, and that's where your mind has to be on the track, is like just figuring out who's an idiot and staying away from them. By the way, I have 0 black flags in my all of them.
Oh man,
what?
Yeah. I've done a lot of racing. I've never had a black flag. Because I identify the people on the track and I stay away from them. And you know what?
But sometimes they're self-inflicted.
One of the people I would have stayed away from is myself the first couple of races. If I go back and think about all the racing I did in the beginning, I was terrible, and I would stay away from myself.
You're COVID separating from yourself now?
I got lucky. I think about some of the stuff I've done. I've been lucky. I haven't had black flag. It's not only because I can recognize bad drivers, but it's also I've been lucky.
So just taking a step back to one of the comments we were talking about before with the two wheels off and what to do and what not to do. We found a group called Brakes, and we sent our son there. And as one of the driving drills that they do for new drivers, and he had his permit at the time, is they'll actually take them and put them two wheels off and teach them what to do.
There is one, I've only seen it one place here at the Thunderhill Teen Drivers Clinic. They do it up here too.
Yeah. But just imagine, I mean, we're talking about the fun of, semi-experienced drivers, at least road drivers on a track, not knowing what to do. Just imagine like a teenage driver who's barely competent. What are they going to do when they're trying to get back off the road? So, they just said, hey, we need to teach them. And, maybe that's something we should look at for, an HBD drill once or twice, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. You can also play like 200 hours of dirt rally and that will do it too.
For sure.
No, I'm serious. If
skid pad helps.
Yes.
Not for two wheels off. Yeah.
No, but if you go and play 200 hours of dirt rally or whatever else where you've got some like slippery stuff, you will learn, and you've got a good force feedback wheel. You can learn how to correct oversteer automatically, and you won't have those problems. But it does take hundreds. It does take an investment of time. You can't just you can't use your little PlayStation controller and be like, hey, I've learned the track. No, you have to if you can ingrain oversteer recovery into your muscle memory, then you won't have to think about it. And you can do that in a simulator. You don't actually have to do it in the real world.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All true. Everything
this is where like when I think about how much driving I've done, on-track driving, it's like 80 hours of on-track driving is all I've done. But if I look at my sim racing hours, it's well over 1,000. It's not like I haven't put my time in. I have put my time in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just not a real, and just in, fake cars or whatever, virtual cars. It's not exactly the same. In some ways it's easier, some ways it's harder, but the
net result is Ian. The net result is Ian is a very fast in-person, in real life driver, like fast as anybody else in the track. He can do it.
Thanks, man.
It's true. Hey, you can only say things about somebody like Ian who keeps statistics on every single thing. You can only say true things, and I'm only saying something that's true.
Ben, my standard deviation is 0.026 behind the other driver that I'm comparing as the baseline for normal fast driving cars. And, if I was a little closer, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, so how much, one of my favorite things to do in the world would be to drive in the rain. And I've only done it 4 or 5 times. And yet it's the best thing in my life. I love, but in California, it doesn't rain that often. So I don't get much opportunity to do it. But when I get on the rain, rain to me is I'm driving in dirt rally, and it's
mm-hmm.
I don't, so I get to use my slippery slidey skills that I don't normally get to use, and so it's kind of it's fun, and I don't think have to have, well, I'm gonna say you don't have to have lots of real life experience, but you do have to be able to translate the virtual world into the real world, and I think that's not a skill that everybody can do. I know people who do virtual racing and cannot do real racing. They can't translate one from the other. But for me, that's what helps me. But you can spend 1,000 hours in the real world and be terrible also, and not just 1,000 hours in the virtual world.
I had a student last year at VIR. I think he was an intermediate track driver. He showed up with one of those cars like you have Toyota AF or what's the Subaru version? Anyway, one of those. What do you have, Bill? What's that Toyota that you have? FRS. He had like an FRS.
Oh, FRS at 86 and BRZ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think he had a really nice BRZ that he had done a fair amount of performance mods to, but it was only his second track day. And this guy was good enough, mostly from iRacing, that I never have to do this in the car, but I actually had to slow this kid down in a few places just to kind of fine tune some things. But for the most part, once he got going, I just sat in there as a safety monitor. He was a great driver, and I didn't need to tell him much about what he was doing. And I think it was only his second event at the track. But there were just a few times where I was like, "Oh, easy, Tiger," but that was about it.
Yeah, I have when I can always tell when there's this the person has done sim racing, and I coach for Hooked on Driving, and when I get a sim racer person who's done a lot of sim racing, I can tell immediately in the car. And this one time, this guy, he'd never really driven on track before. He shows up in a Kia Soul because his dad, No,
because that's what you do.
He crashed his dad's BMW on the street, and so his dad was like, "Well, I'm not going to get you. You can't really drive a fast car. We're going to get you this. We're going to get you the least exciting car possible." And so it was a base model Kia Soul with a manual transmission, and so we went up on track, and the very first thing we do is we sort of take him out on a test, just like a test drive, like on the track to show him where the sights are. And I was like, I've never been to Kia Soul before, but God damn, it has lift off with throttle oversteer. I was able to slide it through the corners with the traction control on. I'm like sliding this thing all over the place. Like, this is a fantastic car. And his eyes just lit up. It's like, oh, the car can do that. And he got in the car and just drove the wheels off of it. I think he was the second fastest car in our group. And there were like Corvettes in our.
Oops, Dad.
I told his dad later, I was like, do you know this kid actually has got some skills? You might encourage a little bit of this hobby. And so next time he went to track, I think he didn't expect me on it. I bet he took a bunch of names in that thing.
Yeah, oh yeah. I just had to look up what a Kia Soul is. It's the little SUV that's like a tiny box. That's great. I love it.
It turns out it's a fantastic track car. I mean, who would know it, right? No, it slides through every corner. You just hammer it, lift, it slides the back end out, and then when it gets the right angle, you just hammer it again. It just like you slide through every corner.
That sounds like a Ben car all to itself.
Oh yeah, and that was with the traction control. I didn't turn the traction control off. I mean, it actually allows it to slide.
Is there possibly another book in your future, or is there what would an intermediate driver version be?
Yeah, I've got a couple of sequels I'm in the middle of, and then I keep writing and rewriting them in different ways, and then I think I've roped my brother into rewriting the first book and adding it to a second book, and writing the first sort of what I would consider modern driver's book, and modern being that it takes advantage of data. And so for every single part of the track, it would talk about, this is what your data traces can look like. This is what it should look like. If you're seeing this is what it means. And it's all about using the data loggers, mostly just the speed trace, because everybody's going to have that. Not everybody's going to have the OBD2 stuff or CAN bus stuff, right? But just like what you can infer from with speed trace. And we would do that in a general book, but we'd also have individual track guides. So we're thinking about doing this, and also a YouTube channel. We're thinking about doing this, and we've got plans for doing it. We haven't done much along that way, but we have both done a lot of like background homework about stuff that we want to do. We just haven't like implemented everything. And we're also still looking for like some extra help on some parts of the writing or video production and other stuff. So we're thinking about it.
I think you just got to volunteer.
It won't be called You Suck at Racing or anything like that. I think we're going to try and make it a little bit more positive than that.
You shouldn't suck after reading this book at racing.
Yeah, actually, I had the sequels for You Suck at Racing. One of them was called You Suck at Racing 2, TOO, but it's also
there you go.
Yeah.
The other one was called You Still Suck at Racing, a little carrot with You Still Suck at Racing. That was going to be a sequel. Another one would do is In Slow, Out Fast, and Other Lies of the Racetrack.
Oh, very nice. I like that one.
Yeah, there was going to be.
Yeah, they're definitely catchy names. I mean, you have a lot of names that are out there, but to have a book that actually kind of has such a unique name to it, it definitely draws people to it.
Well,
you're like, oh, okay.
The name actually comes from a YouTube series long ago, which was the You Suck at Photoshop. And so it was actually, I copied somebody else. It wasn't as original as it was done out of reverence for a really well done comedy education YouTube series.
Every time I hear it or say it in my head, I'm like, you suck at racing. That's how I say it.
You say it.
Like I'm saying it to somebody, like, you suck at racing.
I kind of say it about myself. I kind of say it about myself too, because I don't really think I'm actually that good at racing. I think that's sort of, there's so many parts of racing that I'm so terrible at. Anything to do with the car, like I don't know anything about cars, as it turns out. Like I
hate cars.
I hate cars too. I hate.
Listen, I like racing. I hate cars.
No, it's true. It's like I don't understand cars at all. I'm just like, I'm the worst person to ask for car help. And yet people ask me because they think I know. And sometimes I think I've come up with some kind of solution. I was like, somebody comes over to me and they're like, oh, I'm not getting this thing to happen. I was like, well, did you check the ignition advance? Didn't rattle off or something like that? And I'll be like, It'll come back, and
Did
it'll
you
be that thing. I'm
restart
like,
it?
I don't know.
Did
Did
you
you turn
reboot
it off and turn it back on?
That's right. Close the door,
Yeah, they
punch
got
the
them
side
gas in it.
twice. Yeah.
Sometimes I can make a guess and it'll be correct, but it doesn't mean I actually know how to fix it. Like I don't know my way around any other cars than like it's so good that I have a Yaris that takes zero maintenance because like, but it's street legal too. So if anything goes wrong with it, I can just drive it to the garage and I can just be like, hey, can you guys fix this? And they'll fix it.
Well, if you do need help, just let us know. We'd love to help. And
Oh yeah.
yeah.
What do we know about cars?
I didn't say we were going to help them with what to do about cars.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys know.
Sure.
Wow.
Just because I've written a book doesn't mean that you don't know more than I do. Just because you have a podcast.
Oh, trust me. That's not the reason you know more than we do, but we're willing to help.
But you might know more than I do, honestly. I mean, I don't know much about this sport. I'll be the first to admit it.
Well, we're trying. Thanks for the support, Vicki. Love that. Love that.
I'm here for you, hon.
All right. So,
what I was going to say there was something about intermediate. So the main keys from the difference between novices and intermediates is that novices are generally super tentative and they're unwilling to press either of the pedals hard. Like they're afraid to press a brake pedal hard. They're afraid to press the throttle pedal. They're just afraid a lot of the time to do any, to put commitment into any control. The problem with them intermediates is
I can agree with that.
it's not necessarily a bad place to be. The next stage is like the intermediate stage is where it gets really dangerous, which is the overcommitment to the controls, as that people press each one of the controls or whatever is the steering. Everything is too hard and there's not nuanced at all. And that stage it can sometimes look fast, but it's but it's not that fast. And you can see that it's not going to be fast. Like if you have data and you can see where people are losing time or something like that. But it's like, sometimes I like to think about these things in sports kind of forms. Like we've all like played some basketball probably in our lives, even if it was only an hour that they forced us to play in gym. That's not me. I was actually a gym rat. I went to the basketball court all the time and I've got thousands of hours of basketball in me. Doesn't mean I'm actually any good at basketball.
Do you have a spreadsheet to support this assertion, sir?
Don't push me on that, but I do. Or tennis. I've spent thousands of hours of playing tennis. And at my best, maybe I could have made a college team on either one of those, or something like that. But it's not like I'm not setting the world on fire, even with my thousands of hours of training on these things. And you can look at me and you can look at my strokes and you can say, a person who knows football or whatever, tennis or basketball or whatever, they could look at that and say, oh yeah, that's what the person's doing wrong. That's the person doing wrong. And you could tell. That's the same thing with driving. You can watch somebody drive, and if you do know what you're doing, you can look at a person and say, I can tell they don't know what they're doing. But if you have no idea, it looks fine either way. And it's like, so the kinds of things that novices do would be like, throwing a basketball underhanded, because at least they get it towards the basket. And then the intermediates, what would they do? They might be throwing the jump shots up from their chest, or they might be doing a two-hand something overhead, like some weird stuff, and like you can see good technique if you know what it looks like. But if you don't have any idea what it looks like, it's kind of hard to tell like who's doing what right and wrong. And so a lot of intermediate stuff is not knowing what it's supposed to look like, not knowing what it's supposed to feel like. And most drivers never get out of intermediate. And the reason is because it's too expensive. There's no way to spend 1,000 hours on a racetrack. Nobody has the money to spend 1,000 hours on the racetrack. Nobody has. Right. You can spend 1,000 hours on a soccer pitch. You can spend 1,000 hours on a basketball court, but you cannot get 1,000 hours on a racetrack, which is why there's so many people who are terrible at racing. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that's the fact of the matter. It's like it's one of the hardest sports to get good at because it's too expensive to get good at it. And so the bar is just really, really low. And so that's why, like, you suck at racing. It's sort of like, yes, you're supposed to suck at racing. Everybody sucks at racing because there's not enough time to get better at it. And so how does the intermediate driver get to the point where they're like advancing when there's no time to do it? And there's things to do. There's drills. Like when you're an intermediate basketball player, you don't just go out and like you get on a high school team and you get a coach and they tell you, we're gonna drill this kind of jump shot from the side or whatever. Do you see the other day Stephen Curry on YouTube? He had 103
straight.
Yeah. At my best, I can get about 8 On a typical day, if I go to the gym and I shoot for half an hour, I get 5 3-pointers in a row, not 100.
Yeah.
You know,
People don't realize how far that 3-point shot is too. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah. And hitting 10 in a row is really different from hitting 100 in a row.
Yeah.
The level of skill that he has and like expertise that he has is just insane. And there are people like that would be with cars too, right? Like you think about how many hours have I put into car driving, 100 hours of real track driving or something like that. That's not going to get you anywhere in the world. Imagine like, oh, we're just going to send this kid over here to a weekend basketball camp. And then they're going to join a team after a weekend basketball camp. But that's it is for racing. It's like, oh, go to an SCCA approved school, 3-day license school. Now you're going to go racing. It's like, how good could you possibly be? Terrible.
Or you don't learn how to play basketball by having 3 practice games.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do a couple of practice starts, a couple of jump balls, and now we're all good at this.
We're good to go. Where's
So
the playoffs? Yeah.
So you got to do drills. It comes down to doing things like, what are your drills? What are the drills for the intermediate driver? And I've got like probably 10 different drills that I would say, these are the drills that you do as an intermediate driver to get better. And they're all involving with like coordination of the car. And
I think
stuff like
we
that,
still are.
and speed sensing and stuff like that. There's like one of my favorite drills, probably the best drill that you will, if I would say what's one drill, it's in the Keith Codes Superbike School. It's the drive around with no brakes. Drive the entire track with no brakes, the no brakes drill. You will learn exactly how fast you can enter every corner if you're never allowed to use your brakes. And then you will also start to optimize the exit of the corner because you're going to try because your brain wants to go as fast as it can around the track. So you will be thinking a lot about the exit and how to optimize that. Because the number one problem with the intermediate driver is over braking the entry and then jamming on the throttle. And what happens is, you overbrake the entry, you got understeer. Then you jam on the throttle, throws all the way back, you still got understeer. So you're fighting understeer the whole time. And so the steering wheel is turned, and that's no fast way around the track. You don't want the steering wheel to turn if you want to go the fast way around the track. So if you want to learn how to be fast, you got to get off the brakes. And the best way to learn how to get off the brakes is not to use them ever. You will learn the entry speed, the maximum entry speed, and you will learn the momentum line, and you will learn how to get on the throttle. Later on, after that, I mean, that's a great drill, but it doesn't help you rotate the car. And the secret to my thought was thinking is the secret to advanced driving, the thing after that is actually rotating the car early in the entry. So you need to be able to get the car rotated under brakes, and you have to be able to do steering corrections under brakes, not under throttle. A lot of people think that's the skinny pedal that they use to get oversteer, but it's the brake pedal. Brakes out pedal oversteer is the key to advanced driving. It's getting the car pointed to the exit, getting the steering wheel unwound so that you're actually not steering through the corner with the front tires, that the back tires are doing a lot of work for you. And that's
you get the rotation done pretty early. So by the time the process is coming out, you got that wheel straight and you're only working on coming out. I like to do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Throttle on before apex, not at apex, not after apex, throttle on before apex. So get your dirty stuff done early. But I got
a question for you. This is one that Bill was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask before he says it. So in relation to speed and angle at the apex, how much of a difference does that make as far as how fast you're going? Does it matter what angle and sort of angle of attack you are at the moment of apex, or sort of could you be sort of at any angle as long as you're at the apex coming out safely? Is that close, Bill?
It's pretty close. I mean, we've only asked it like 6 different ways to use, so we might as well try Ian now.
We keep asking this question, trying to figure it out. I don't answer it very well.
Well, I think you got to be pointed down the track more. Being pointed, it does matter. The angle of the apex absolutely matters, I think. Yeah, you have to, but also, so you can be at the right angle, but if you're not also at the right speed, it was done incorrectly, right? Like you have to have both the speed and the angle at the right thing. Because what happens, you can get the right angle and be overslowed. You can also be the right speed at the wrong angle, right? Yep. Like the optimal way through that is actually multiple dimensions. There's G's going left, and there's the side to side G's, front back G's, up and down G's, in addition to yaw and speed, and all of those things have to be maximized. There's a fast way through that optimizes all of those things, and there's probably multiple fast ways through, but if you just try and figure out like one of those things and you're screwing up the other one, it's like there's people like, I'm full throttle at the apex. Well, you did slow the car down 20 miles an hour slower than it needed to be slowed. Of course you're full throttle at the apex.
Because you had to drive over to
miles an hour.
Right. I'm at partial throttle because if I had more throttle, I'd fall off the track.
Yeah. Okay, so
I have another question,
ahead,
real quick before we get off of that.
No worries.
Another Bill question that I think our listeners could hear another opinion of is one that he's brought up. It was new to me recently, but the idea of even if you're offline, but you're at full commitment, you're going to be faster than somebody who was slowing down enough to be perfectly online, but wasn't as committed as somebody who might be, you know, a few feet off an apex or not exactly getting to the right spot. What do you think about that?
I would say, here's my answer to that, which is not an answer at all. You know, when people talk about cars, they say like, you know, fast, cheap, reliable, pick two.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Here's optimal grip, optimal line, optimal awareness, pick two.
Okay.
Yep.
That's you at any point in time, right? Like you can't choose, you can't have all three. And so like, if you're thinking optimal line and optimal position, like, what's my optimal position and my optimal grip on track, that takes a lot of awareness and you probably can't see the car who's about to hit you. And so there's a more important thing, which is I'm answering this with a different way, which is there's a safety concern that's more important than speed concern, which is that, you got to have enough spare attention to be thinking about the people around you. Now, if you know there's nobody else around you, nowhere else on track, and you're doing your burner, then yeah, by all means, you know, put all of your attention on the line, the position, and the grip. But in terms of like, if you're racing a person against some person and the other person does not know the limit of their car and you do, you just go around them all the time. Like, of course, it's faster to go offline and drive the car at its limit. You have to do it all the time.
Right.
It's true. That's a great point. In endurance racing, that's most of what we're doing, right?
Yeah. It's like, there's a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing. And and it's okay that they don't know what they're doing, right? Like we all started there. So it's like, you find that person, they have no idea what they're doing. And you're just like, hey, let's have a little bit of fun together and, you know, see you later. Ben spends more time doing this than anything else. Like his right hand is probably sore from all the time he's waving to people as he passes them. Bye, see you, bye.
I've tried to get less social and keep my hands on the wheel in the last couple of years, but yeah, I
you wave. You know, oh my God.
We talk about the topic of trying to sort of be too beholden to the line versus, you know, working outside the lines a little bit in endurance traffic. That's definitely something that you could also, our listeners and everybody could practice at a DE day. You know, even if it's not what your group is doing, if you're in the intermediate or the, you know, advanced intermediate group, even if not everybody else is out there not doing that, maybe if you let your group leader know or the guy in track out know, hey, I'm going to go do a little bit of offline driving, so there's nothing wrong. I'm just going to kind of do some weird stuff to learn some racecraft stuff. Usually, you can tell them that at a track event. They'll go, okay, and they'll radio to all the corner workers like, hey, this guy's going to try some different stuff. So these are things that you can explore even outside of race traffic, and it's safe and even, I would say, beneficial to do.
I would say that on a racetrack, I hardly ever drive the racing line. Like in an actual race, I'm never on the racing line, because like if I set up on the outside of the corner and I'm in a 2007 Yaris, I'm the slowest car on the track. If I set up on the outside of the corner, someone's going to behind me is going to be like, there's an E36 behind me. Like, oh, that he's a slowpoke. I'm going to cut inside of him and he's going to hit my door and he's going to ruin my race or whatever. No way. I'm going on the inside. You can hit my bumper. I am not going anywhere. You know, it's like, no way. I'm going to put my car in a position where the only thing you can hit is my bumper. I'm not going to let anybody ever hit my rear wheel. And so that's like when I'm driving around the track, that's literally what I'm like thinking to myself is, you are not hitting me. I'm going to put my position. My position is not about optimizing the speed through the corner. It's, you know, unless I know the person and I know they're a good driver, which most of the time is definitely not. But if I see somebody, you know, there's some people who are out there, you know, the people who are going to race and win, the race winners, they're never getting in trouble because they know how to race.
Nope.
And so you
they
can
know how to be patient and wait.
Yeah. So you can race with those guys, but when you find people that they're suspect, you just got to treat them with a lot of caution.
Yeah.
So some of our people still are, yes.
Yeah, me too. I run people in my car all the time. Those are also people in my car. And I just sort of like, thank you everybody else for giving us lots of room. I remember this one race we went to, it was a chump car race. And I had 4 noobs on my team, people who I had went to school with before, who had never raced before, a person from work who had never raced before, literally people had never been on track before. And we went to a chump car race as their first track event. And I stood up and I said, right in the meeting, and I was like, I just want to let you know, this is we're in car 86 here, and there's a race going on and we're not in it. So just so you know, we're not racing you for any corner. You will get by us at any time. So just please, give us space, and it was fine, and everything worked out just fine. People had a great time. Yeah. Anyway, so it was really great. Actually, it was a really great introduction to racing for these guys. And the race was so poorly attended because Chump Car didn't really have a lot of West Coast presence.
Mhm.
And so there were so few people in the race that it's actually pretty safe, and it worked out okay.
So I don't know that I'm going to eventually get to a question. I'm going to try to get to a question. So we talked about earlier how you really don't have the ability to be on track enough, which is partly the reason why I do two different things. Is one, I try and overthink things because I'm trying to make up for the ability that I have to be on track or not be on track. I know it's shocking to everybody. And then two, and Vicky's going to make even a louder comment, I try to be really, really efficient with the time that I spend, because you just settle down. You just settle down. Anyway, so I try to be really, really, really efficient with the time that we have, because I've only got so much time. So I sit there and I ponder how best to get at the most out of each turn, and prepping for the track and going to the track and each stint, and the entire day. And Vicki and Jennifer just sit there and say, why do you keep handing us notebooks that have filled out sheets with what we should do and how we should be thinking and what the drill is for that time? But anyway, so I guess what it comes down to is I really want to help you with your book, because I have to find out better ways to do things. And even if it's just editing, or if you want second ideas, or if I can help in any way that's actually additive, more than willing to give you a hand.
Okay, I might take you up on that. Also, you have an invite to my team anytime you want, if that's your attitude.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I like people who are organized and who try to make every minute count, stuff like that. And so but also every minute count means that if our neighbors suddenly have problems with their car, that you don't hesitate to just run over there and help them as quickly as possible. Like that's it's like, yes, we want to make the most of our time, but we also want to make sure that everybody else gets the most of their time. So it's like we have my team, I think, has a pretty friendly atmosphere about that kind of stuff. And we would like to find more people who are also trying to make the whole race a better thing. And it's not about me, it's about us.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the
Bill's the
classic Garage Heroes pre-race pep talk is, listen, if we were trying to win this race, we would have brought different drivers. So let's get this taken care of right off the bat.
Every race, that is said.
This is perfect.
Every race.
That is exactly the pep talk I need. It's like, all right. Like, if we wanted to win this race, we'd have a different car, we'd have different drivers. It might even be an event. We'd pay more money.
Exactly. I mean, we'd actually.
Bill also comes in and he says, listen, if we finish 50%,
and
good
we
with
don't
that.
Often, but we still try.
Yeah, my pep talk it's not really a pep talk, but it's like, it's a win if the car drives home.
Sure.
Right?
We won most races then.
Yeah. No, that's for me too. It's like, actually, we flat tow the car because it's street legal. I just stick a yoke on it and flat tow it. Yeah. So it's literally drives home.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So that's winning for us, is that we participated and had a fun time, and everybody went away a little bit happier.
Our stretch goal is we want to, if there's 108 cars, we want to finish 54th.
We did. I have to say, we did finish third. I finished third 3 times. Okay.
See, we would have 3 cars in the race for us to finish third.
So Ben and I, the very first race I've ever done, the Champ Car race we did, it was Champ Car back then. We went to Laguna Seca, and Ben I showed up and drove this other guy's Miata, and really Ben drove the win. I got in this car and I was like, I literally got to the track, and then a half an hour later I was in the car. I'd never seen the car or anything like that. I'm like,
or the track.
Yeah, I'd never seen the track of the car before. I had no idea how to get out of the car. They put me in the car and I'm driving, and I realized I don't know how to activate the window net. if there's a fire or something, I can't get out of the car. Like, I don't literally know how to get out of the car. So I drove it around at like the slowest I could possibly manage it, because I was trying not to make sure I didn't die in the car. But Ben drove it like his hair was on fire.
That's a lot of fire.
And that's a lot of fire.
That's a lot of hair.
And we took home a third place trophy. The next time I got a third place trophy was it's actually another jump car race. This was at Thunderhill, and it was a 2-driver team, just me and Roger Eagleton. Roger is actually a professional racer.
Roger's a big deal.
Yeah, he's a pro racer now. So we went up there, and we got third place by just having 2 drivers. No, like for fueling and everything else, just 2 drivers. We had 2 drivers. The entire thing was 2 drivers for crew and everything. And so, but we somehow managed a third place out of that. But it was really, I've had the fortunate sort of circumstance to be able to drive with some pretty great drivers like Roger, and some professional drivers like some World Rally Cross drivers and other stuff. It's pretty cool. The third time I got third place was we went down to the 24-hour race in Buttonwillow. Lucky Dog was running 24 hours. So we took the Yaris down there, and I was like, you know what? We've never done a 24-hour race before. So we're not really going to try and win or anything. So we're going to use 320 treadwear tires, and, you know, we're just going to go out there and whatever. And it turned out that, like, in the middle of the night when everybody was driving slowly, we just kept driving the same speed through the darkness. And so we ended up like getting third place overall in the race.
Yeah.
Wow. Like we were actually in C class, and we were supposed to get first in C class, but then we got protested out of C class because the car was 2007. It was too new to be officially within the rules. So imagine protesting a Yaris because it was too fast.
That is some chicken shit.
I know, protesting a Yaris on 320 treadwear tires. That's what they did. And so we ended up having to go into the super dog class and not getting our C class trophy. But yeah, that's where the illegal cars go. But we still ended up with third overall.
These super dog
somebody had
Yaris.
hurt feelings.
Yeah, and we had to do a brake change in the middle of that too, because I brought 2 sets of brake pads with us, and after 8 hours we were in metal on metal. And I was like,
are you still running those janky stop tags everywhere?
That was Stop Tech Reds. And so I was like, oh my God, we have now, I don't do that anymore. Now I got some big Corolla calipers on my car, but
there we go.
It's like, now we got to run 16 hours on the 1 set of brake pads we have left. And so we drove around the track without I was like, all right, you get to use your brakes maybe once or twice per lap. That's it. Because we have to make it last now twice as long as the first set. And so we went out there and just coasted through braking zones constantly. Still got third place.
That's excellent.
It's pretty
Very
epic.
cool.
You know, the words we haven't heard on our podcast, we upgraded our brakes to Corollas.
Got some big meaty Corolla calipers on there.
That's right. Porsche,
Yeah,
don't need us thinking Porsche. We got Corollas, baby. Good.
When you're coming from a Yaris to Corolla, it's a major
See what this
upgrade.
Yaris looks like.
2007.
Prepare to be impressed, Vicki.
Hold on.
You keep do this. Okay, so Vicki and Jen usually love to have this time where we talk with the different. Vicki saw what a Yaris is. So
did you just look up a Yaris?
Yeah.
For the podcast audience who can't see what's happening right now, Vicki is chortling. And she's trying to stop her chortling so much because now everybody's looking at her. Now she has her hand covering her face and she's laughing hard, very hard at Ian's race car. So yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. You can totally
Cute.
laugh at mine.
It's
That's
cute.
that's a super dog car there, Vicki. So you better just
Yeah.
mellow out. It's not like our Lucky Dog 196 car. So
No.
So anyway, we know a little bit about your background. We know a little bit more about You Suck at Racing and things that you're thinking about putting forward. Now it's time for Jen and Vicki's favorite part of the podcast.
All right.
The Fast and Furious Storytime questions. We get
All
to
right.
know you a little bit better, and we're probably going to be dipping a little bit into your history. So
Cool.
kick it off, Jen.
All right. So what was your very first car and what was the worst car you've ever had?
My very first car was a 1995, maybe Ford Ranger. And the worst car I've ever had is an MR2.
Why?
Wait.
did you- I'm curious right here because you're like my age. How come your car is a 1990 something?
I never owned the other cars. I mean, my girlfriend had a car, who's now my wife. It was her
Ah.
car. Like I drove her car around. Yeah.
All right,
Oh.
we got to go back to this MR2 thing. Now, are we talking the first gen? Or are we
Yeah,
talking
first
the
gen
second?
MR2. The first gen
Okay.
MR2. It's
All
like the worst car because
Okay.
it broke all the time.
I'm a second gen fan, so I just was making
Okay.
sure that we were on the same page.
Okay, yeah.
We weren't going to come to blows or anything, but I was just going to be like, why'd you have so much trouble? I did 250,000 miles and never changed anything but the oil, not even brakes. Anyway.
You weren't tracking it.
No, I was not tracking it. I drove it like I was, though. So we had 4 studded snow tires on the MR2 with a cut-in quarter train wheel in the back because we used to go up to the mountains in Killington in an MR2 all year round.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was a little silly, but we had a good time. All right, so there's this concept that we've stolen from another podcast that we like very, very much, and they call it a taproot car. It could be the noise of a car when you were growing up. It could be a Hot Wheels car. It could be a neighbor's car. It could be one of your family's car. What was the car that got you into cars?
It's the Laser 917 kit car that was advertised in the back of Popular Science.
Wow.
Cool.
Ooh.
You know what I'm talking about? Those VW fiberglass models?
No,
Yeah, it's like, buy a Laser 917 or whatever. I salivated over those things as an 11-year-old or whatever it was. Yeah, that's it.
Sadly, I know exactly which car that is, but yes.
It's like a Porsche 917.
just like it. Just so much
plasticky.
like it. So much like it. Yeah. It just doesn't have Ferdinand in it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Vicki.
Yes. So, what is that one thing that no one knows about you that would surprise them?
That one
Betty's
thing.
had less than 100 hours on the track. Good Lord.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind.
That surprised me, and I've known this guy for a minute.
100 minutes?
I don't know now.
I don't know.
Ben, why don't you go get your spreadsheet and find out how long you've known?
I guess it's probably surprising if people would know that I play like Overwatch. Like that's a first-person shooter game.
Really?
Like 11-year-olds play, but
Oh, yeah.
I play a lot of games with 11-year-olds.
Oh, but you've also been a competitive IRL shooter before too. Like you and Mara used to do shooting and stuff for fun.
Yeah, well, I have done a little bit of IRL shooting, but not that much, honestly. I've done a little bit of pistol shooting and shotgun shooting, but I haven't done much of it now.
Yeah,
I've done a little bit. It's
any
kinda
of that sounds like a lot to me. So I'm sure I haven't
Yeah,
skewed
it's
you.
just
Like
like-
anybody says they did that.
It's pouring money out of a barrel. It's too expensive. I can't do it.
So
yeah.
far be it for me not to take advantage of this. So when often we ask what does no one know about you that would surprise them, the person thinking about it has a really tough time. However, we found throughout the ages that Ian, what would one thing about Ben that no one knows that would surprise them? Those are usually much easier and honestly way more fun.
I'm an
Gotcha,
open
Ben.
book.
Ben.
I'm an open book.
I was driving the car. Ben was in this passenger seat one time, and I'm driving. It was in my E30, and I'm like driving it around. I forgot what it was. It was Thunderhill, but I forgot exactly which course it was. And the car is sliding all over the place, and I think he fell asleep briefly.
Of course he did.
It sounds like he was recording a podcast.
No, I literally sort of like does like literally like falling asleep.
I
like,
drove
all
that
right.
car in flip flops. I drove that car on Thunderhill West, like the second track day at Thunderhill West. We were all so excited hopping in and out of cars. And I think I thought I was done for the day. It was the same day. I jump in to take Thomas, our mechanic, out because he wanted to see how I was getting around the track. And like halfway around the lap, I go to like kick a downshift, like a heel toe downshift. I realized like, I am in flip flops right now. So I came back in the pits.
But Ben is so relaxed on track he can fall asleep. That would be the thing that people probably didn't realize nothing. Well, actually, you would expect that about Ben.
Yeah.
Because it's all just a fun game to him. So of course he can fall asleep. He's also what else? I don't know. I would say he is one of the most genuinely good people that I know. My good in the sense of like charitable good.
Oh.
Yes,
That's nice of you to
he has this charitable streak that goes inside him that people probably don't understand, like, because there's this competitive part of him too, and then but the competitive part of him is like a total asshole. But
Yep.
like
Yep.
I would never
True.
want to race next to Ben, right? But if I ever needed anything, I know Ben would be there. He's always there for other people. He's always thinking about other people in a very positive way.
I
Well,
see
thanks.
that. I see that.
Okay.
It's very true.
Yeah, Ian can identify that because he is very much the same way. Also, he's a very good tennis player and does more fencing than anybody else I know. Like fencing with a sword with a tiny ball in the end.
Ah,
Yeah, like I have like this is that lists about 3 or 4 of my 40 hobbies. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's my
That's
favorite
awesome.
of his alternate hobbies is the fencing. I've never got to see him do it, but he talks about like there's some real stuff going on. Like you have the suit, right? Do you have the whole suit?
Yeah, of course I do.
That's
With the
awesome. How cool is that?
The electrical sensor. Yeah.
Yeah, you got that stuff. I don't do that so much anymore. Anyway, that lasted a little while, but I don't do that right now.
Ian, there's so many layers to you. Like,
I didn't know your actual age until tonight.
53. I'm out at 54 in like in February, so getting close.
Yeah, so you're exactly 10 years older than me. And like most of the time I've known you, I'm like, how old is this dude? Like I know he's up for me, but I was like, how old is this guy? I'm never gonna ask him because that would take the mystery out of it. But now I'm dead.
And let me tell you where I feel my age the most is in, well, I've had a lot of back problems recently, but things like I didn't realize, like, as you get older, all the sort of small things that just start to degrade in performance, and just like watching all that stuff, eyesight, hearing, balance, all sorts of stuff. It's
I can't hear you.
The two that bother me are the localized higher gravity, because obviously it's not me, and the floor keeps getting further and further away. I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah.
My knee makes a noise like jeans tearing, like blue jeans tearing when I stand up.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be fun, right? That's gonna be fun, right, guys?
That's not new for me.
I've had 4 knee surgeries, so
Oh,
yeah, I'm there with you on that.
On which knee?
2 and 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, you're also a guy who has actively put a bunch
trying
of
to
stress
balance
on your knees.
Yeah,
Let's
but I'm
be
trying to
real.
balance
That's
that
why
out.
he's race car driving, much like Bill, because you can't play any other sport with 2 knees like that.
I can play. I just can't land.
I wish I
right.
could.
We're going off the rails. Let's bring this back. How about let me see. What is that car in your family that sticks out the most in your mind?
My dad had a 1949 MGTC.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. That was a cool car, I think. That was the original Miata. I don't know if people know that, but the MGTC was like the original boy racer.
Yeah. Vicky's going to have to look that one up too, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
as I'm Googling it now.
MGTC.
It was always I always understood that they sort of based the Miata design off of some pretty successful British sports car layouts, right?
Yeah, I mean, what do I know about cars? Don't ask me.
Yeah, I started talking about stuff I don't really know, but that's what I heard one time. I don't know anything about cars.
All right, Ian, our next question. Automatic, stick, or don't care?
Don't care.
Oh, okay.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Who's your favorite race car driver?
Do I have to pick one?
You can't say, and also you can't say me. You can't say Ben Dawson. Like it's been too much already.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's been taken.
The problem with that is, like, when I say did I have to pick one, is because I don't actually know any. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, are you aware of any race car drivers?
No, I'm not really aware of any. So,
but that's a really interesting thing about you is a lot of us come to the sport with like a deep history of fandom. I mean, before I ever turned to a competitive wheel, I had decades of being at the track myself, watching my dad and his buddies race. Like I had a bunch of history that led me to the track, but you sort of showed up. But you don't have a bunch of deep roots like you were watching this guy in the '90s or anything, right?
I don't know anybody. I will say Prost. What's the guy's name? The French
Alain
guy.
Prost. Yeah.
Alain Prost. Why am I going to say that? Because everybody says Senna. So I'm going the other way.
Well, also they called him the
Senna's
professor.
Yeah, that's right.
The professor, and there you are also a professor.
Okay, so I'm going to say him, even though I know nothing about him. But he's 100% my favorite right now.
There you go. Cool.
We're going to make a
Nailed
T-shirt. Elaine Prost is my favorite race car driver, and on the back it says, "Because I don't know anybody else."
because I didn't want to pick Senna.
That's right.
So, what do you think? Front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, or it doesn't matter?
All of the above. I want them all. I want literally. I just bought a rear wheel drive car because I wanted to have a rear wheel drive car for driving on the track and a front wheel drive car, and I need to get an all wheel drive car. So I have all of them because I like the differences in driving front wheel drive and rear wheel drive. I love front wheel drive driving. I love rear wheel drive driving, and I wouldn't want to have just one or the other. They're very different. And for
What did you just buy?
I bought the Z3 that nobody wanted, the original one, the 1996, the 1.9.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, those are great.
Yeah,
we got a buddy who has the hard top non-M, and it's that's like banana yellow. That's such a cool car. I love those. Yeah.
Yes. So for my rear wheel drive, like I like low powered cars. So any rear wheel drive car really fine with me. Anything. And same with the front wheel drive cars. Doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I drive my Elantra on track. It's automatic. I drive it on track when I'm not driving the Yaris on track, and I like it fine. It's actually really fun. I put all season tires on the back of it, and I put my racing sort of tires on the front of it. And it's sort of like, it's not quite as bad as driving around like with cafeteria trays, but it's kind of like in the same spirit. It's like you can't drive it straight without the back end chasing you around. Like you can't go around a corner without the back end trying to come around. So it's like a really great kind of oversteer recovery training tool. So on coaching days, I'll go to the skid pad and I will spend, more time on the skid pad than I do on track, just working on my driving skills with the roller skates on the back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have yet cafeteria trays, but I actually want to get some cafeteria trays and do that as my next sort of fun thing to do. Yeah, and you can only do that with
cafeteria trays.
You can only do that with front wheel drive cars. So front wheel drive car, you put cafeteria trays under the back wheels, you pull the parking brake and you drive around like that. And so that's like a form of skid plate racing. And so that's something you can't do with rear wheel drive. And so and
not going forward.
No, not going forward. So that's, I think.
Yeah, so there's some folks on this podcast who would love to get some skid in their rear end, feel that rear end slide like that. We just some cafeteria trays.
Cafeteria trays, front wheel drive car, econo box. You'll be having so much fun and learning a lot while you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Skid pad anywhere, right?
Yeah, you could do that. It just close down a parking lot and do it. It'd be fun.
BYOSP.
Yep.
Yeah. Now the only thing I've never driven an all-wheel drive car on track, and I am actually really interested in trying that. So maybe one day I'll get a Yaris GR or whatever those things are.
I rode with another instructor one time who had a Subaru WRX, which you don't really see people tracking that much, but he really hopped his up. Like we were going like 150 or, the fastest places around VIR. And he was,
oh my goodness.
But he was confident. He was really good at driving that car. And it was interesting. He was not taking the line like he would take either with a front wheel drive or a rear wheel drive car. And it was amazing how he could kind of brake at a weird angle and just brake all the way down to the apex and just take off. It was a whole different experience riding in an all wheel drive car with a really good driver. It was really cool.
That sounds like fun. Yeah.
Have you had a car that got away from you? Like one you wished you could have gotten? Did you have a car that got away, like one where you're like, man, if I could have just kept that one, or I almost got this one?
My E30.
Where is it now?
Sitting next to you, man.
I really love E30s. I really love E30s.
Come race it again. We're going to get rid of it pretty soon, and it's going to be replaced with something different that you can also come race. Whatever we replace it with, come race that too. But the E30 might be gone pretty soon. So if you want to race it, we probably have a couple races left, maybe.
I think I'd rather race the truck that's going to replace it. Right?
Yeah. Well, these guys are trying to talk me out of a truck because they're like, I hate to admit this on the podcast, but like a couple of team members kind of big timed everybody and just bought an enclosed trailer. But I think it's only 24 feet. And they're like, hey, but guys, the S10 is like 38 feet or whatever it is. So we might have just trailered ourselves out of the S10, but it's going to be something very cool, whatever it ends up being. So it'll be something different. I started to twist, like lobbying for a Monza or a C3 maybe.
Ooh. Nice and nice.
Yeah.
You can fit an S10 in a 20-foot truck, Ben.
What about
What
about a C4?
Nope. Absolutely. Nobody wants the pencil. Absolutely not.
I got to drive a C4 as like one of the best things about being a coach is you get to drive other people's cars. And I have to say a C4 with its sort of like Star Wars interior was actually really fun to drive.
I would drive the heck out of one. I'm not sure I'd want to be tied to one as my race car.
Okay, there you go. I feel the same way. I'm sure I wouldn't want to be tied to one.
Now, as far as the C3 with like the plywood frame or whatever, I'm down with that. Whatever that deal is. If I found one of those under $5,000, that's what we'd be doing.
All right.
And I saw one locally for $7,000, so we're in the zone.
What is the fastest you have ever driven a car? What car? Where and when?
107 miles an hour at Thunderhill.
Yeah.
Was it DRs?
No, that Yaris doesn't go that fast. No, it's
But it's a super dog.
no, the Miata. No, the Miata. It was our Miata, and it would go 107 on the straight at the
Is that down the front?
the very end of the front straight. It goes to 107.
Yeah.
I've never driven faster than that.
I love that first turn at Thunderhill. You just brush the brakes and whale it in there. So
Do you know the Yaris? When you put a little tiny eBay wing on it, there's no braking. You just go through it.
I love it. That's great. I would love to do that.
Can you imagine? You come up to that thing, you just lift barely, and then you just go right back to throttle. Lift a little bit to get the back
Swing
out a
in.
little bit, and then you just go right back to throttle, and it's literally no brakes. And people look by like, wait, there's no brake lights going on through that corner. It's just like, wait, what? Wow, what?
Makes to slow you down.
That's wild. I got to come race that car.
Yeah.
Sounds
I mean,
like we all do.
The top speed is like 95 on the straight.
Perfect.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's why you don't have to brush the brakes, because it doesn't get going fast enough to need to.
The lift is brushing.
Yeah.
So assuming that we start playing this lottery and we win, because that's how we roll, we're going to buy a desert island and we're going to build a racetrack on it. And we want to make sure that all our podcast guests are happy when we invite them to the track. So we want to make sure that we have your top 5 cars there waiting for you when you come over to the island. So what cars would you like waiting for you, sir?
Well, I care more about the track than the car.
Well, I mean, you can help us design the track if you like.
Okay, yes, I want it to be a track that's got a dirt section, so it could be run as rallycross.
Yep.
So you can run.
Oh, we have a dirt track and an asphalt track. So
okay.
Or
we're covered.
blended, whatever.
We're covered.
All right. I want one front wheel drive car, one rear wheel drive car, one all wheel drive car. I need a pickup because I want to race a pickup, and
we have a race. Say Chevy S10 with an Isuzu Hombre on top of it, if you wish, with a locker rear end ready to go.
That worked. And the last one, probably no surprise, is the Laser 917.
Ooh.
Yes. All right.
Unless I could have Death Race 2000, the Monster, or any of those other ones. They're all basically the same car. They're all VW Beetles with fiberglass, weird plastic on the top of it. Any of those would be fun.
What could go wrong with that, right?
Absolutely nothing.
Sounds like a dream to me.
It is.
Yeah.
So we know you're not like a mechanical person car wise, but if you could find somebody that would do it for you, what would be your dream car to start a build from?
I want to make a front wheel drive Miata.
Oh yeah. How would you? What's the concept as far as parts and things that go together to make it?
Just because people would be like, why would you do that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Like, you've taken this perfectly balanced rear wheel drive, the most perfectly balanced car, and you made it front wheel drive. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard of. It's like, yeah, sign me up. That's what I want.
I understand.
Because I get your
front wheel
motivation.
drive. Yeah. No, I totally understand that you want to do it just to be a weird about it. But would you transverse the Miata engine? Would you try to work it in to make what's mostly their work, or would you try to import a whole separate drivetrain? Would you migrate the body over onto something else?
I think I'd use the engine that came in the original Toyota Corolla Tercel. So that's a 1979 to 1980 or something like that. It's actually it's an inline 4 that has these half shafts that go down to make it, that turn it halfway or something like that. So it's not like a transverse 4. It's an inline 4, but it's front wheel drive. It's a weird thing. And if you're going to have something like a Miata with a front wheel drive, you should also have an engine pointed the wrong way, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll race it.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would. You
something
and I would have more. Yeah. That'll race a shopping cart against the
I'll race my neighbor to the bottom of the driveway with trash cans.
I'll take you to the first turn.
All right. So if you could only drive a daily drive or race a car from one decade in the past, what decade would you choose?
I think I have to go with 1980s.
Ooh. Why is that?
Well, because I think a lot of us identify the cars of like when we're teenagers or 20s or something around that time. When we think about what generation do we come from, like what's generation X, Y, Z, whatever those things are,
Mhm.
you think about like around your 20s. And so I would have been, in my 20s, it'd be the 80s. So I think about the 80s. So
Very
when I think of my generation would be 80s cars. So what's my ideal 80s car? A 190E.
Oh,
Really?
yeah. Super
Well,
cool.
Cosworth
Bulletproof.
190 or something like that. Mhm.
Bulletproof. Okay.
But my last race in 2020, I had a great time duking it out with one of those. It was a really well done champ car. It had a bunch of aero and stuff on it.
Oh,
It
nice.
was a really fun race. I chased him down. I was kind of gentle with him in traffic and eventually had to move on before I got a fuel stumble and had to come in pits.
Dang.
That's how it goes.
All right. I think I know the answer to this one.
All right.
Jeremy, Hammond, May, Chris, Matt, other? That's the
Is
answer.
that's a
Yep.
question?
Yes.
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 Oh, I know what it is. I hate those guys.
Yes. Yes.
I hate those motherfuckers. When is Inside the NBA going to get actual announcers for their fucking show?
No, that's not it. But that's good. We're good.
Yeah. I mean, also that.
I wish we could end the podcast on that, but we can't. Keep going.
All right. Where
Ultimate
would your
road trip.
ultimate
Where
road
would you-
trip be from and to, and in what car?
Oh, I actually have this already planned out. I was going to drive my Toyota Yaris from California to New York and deliver it to my brother because he wants to race Lemons races out on the East Coast there. And I was going to drive it and hit every racetrack going across. And I had it planned out as far as like, all right, the first stop is going to be at Utah Motorsports Campus. The second stop is High Plains Raceway. The third one is, I think, Raceway Park in the Midlands, whatever. Like there's all these stops. Once you get to the Midwest, it sort of forks off and you have to decide whether I'm going to take the sort of more northern route or the more southern route. Then you have to decide, am I going to go
Like,
up in
you mean
Canada
even
or-
like Road America versus Topeka kind of decision? Am I in the right zone?
Yeah, things like that. Well, not probably Road America because that's a little too far north, but more like
Ohio.
Putnam versus Putnam, which is down like in Indiana, versus heading up higher up into Illinois and hitting like Blackhawk or some of those other things, like Grattan. So, but I wanted to hit like 6 or 7 racetracks on the way across, where it's just like you drive, and I had it all planned out in terms of like, oh, what's really cool is that Utah Motorsports Campus, they do Thursday track days. And then this other place does Friday track days. And then this other thing is that I get on a Saturday, Sunday, and then I get into a track night in America because they're on Tuesdays at Blackhawk, whatever. Like I had this all planned out where I could hop in and every day I would have to drive 8 hours and then be on another track day. Anyhow, so that
sounds like a working motorsports vacation.
I'd be pretty knackered by the end of it. I'd probably just skip the last couple of tracks, right? Just like, oh my god, I'm so tired. I know I paid for those ones, but fuck it, I'm just gonna skip it.
Sounds like your own personal one lap of America.
Yeah.
I want to do one lap.
Okay.
Anybody?
Next question.
Nah,
All right.
Nah.
All right. What is your favorite car
Movie.
from wait a minute, where are we?
Favorite
Sorry.
car
I love my
movie.
car movies.
Car movie or car from a movie?
There you
Favorite
go.
From a movie, right?
Yeah,
It's hard to not pick the Batmobile from the the Adam West era Batmobile.
Oh yeah,
It's
the
hard to
basketball
not
tires.
pick that. And if I was going to make a Lemons car and do it really great, I think a Z3 would be a great donor car to make the original Batmobile because of that really nice long hood. That would be more like the second generation Batmobile with that really long hood. But
Right.
I'm going to say my favorite. That's probably not my favorite one. So I'm going to say either like the Ghostbusters ambulance or the Scooby-Doo van.
This is the Ecto 1 or the Scooby-Doo van. All right.
Yeah, either one. But they're both ghost busting kind of things. Like the utility vehicle. They probably got a lot of cool shit in those. Not like race car shit, but they probably got lots of gadgets and shit.
Yeah, buttons you can push that make cool noises and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Or
like
grappling hooks.
you know that when you get inside there, it looks like the inside of an airplane, and there's all these like switches that do all sorts of who knows what.
Mhm.
That's more
Smoke
interesting.
screens.
But yeah, like that kind of stuff.
So I've always wanted to ask you this one. I don't think it's something we've ever talked about, but of all the different teams we've raced against, or just different cars that we've competed against, could you jump into somebody else's car? If you could jump into somebody else's car and race, like who would it be? I could think of 3 or 4 off the West Coast
That is a
immediately.
really good question. Like, whose car do I want to race?
And where?
Well, I mean, some of the top cars out here, like Eyesore and Cerveza, but they're probably not the cars that I'd want to jump in. I'd want to jump in something. There's a couple of pickups that race out of here that are pretty cool that I would love to get
The
into.
Ranger? You talk about the Ranger that had the person attached to it with like the bow and arrow for a while, that one?
There's a couple of different Rangers. I would take any of the Rangers that people are driving. There's also some earlier like Chevy stuff, and any one of those pickups would be fine. But I also wouldn't mind doing like a team that gets like crazy into their theme and then like have to wear some stupid shit costumes, because I find myself being more drawn to that kind of the silliness of stuff. And so I wouldn't mind going with like driving a silly car. So I don't know.
Hi there.
You took off the two.
I think
you said first.
But you were being more serious. Like, what car do I really actually look at and admire and think, oh, that looks like it's really...
I mean, whatever you would most want to do. I mean, that's what you would most want to do. I want to go screw around with a C-Class team too. I guess my biggest dream is building a bizarre C-Class car alongside my fast race car.
There's this Beetle out here that had the driving on both sides. It had a steering wheel on the left and right. That was like a hella shitty or something car. They had steering wheels.
Oh. You talk about the one that had like a Subaru drivetrain or whatever?
Furkel, it was called, right?
Yeah, Furkel.
The license plate.
Video.
The license plate says feature. It's not a bug, it's a feature. So it's hilarious. I would want to drive that on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and then like compare the two of them and be like, what's it like to drive it on the left versus, because I actually used to live in England for a while, and so I'm actually totally used to driving on the right-hand side of the car. But I would be like to see what experience would it be like to drive left and right in the same car. I think that would be kind of a unique experience.
That's really cool, because there's a video of, like, right before I left California, I got to race with Mike in a tiny vet, and that car and me duked it out at Sears Point, like the Furkel, because I guess they thought they were used to.
Is Furkel the 9? Is that the 911 or is that the Beetle?
Oh, and not the 911. I'm talking about the Beetle. What Ferdinand? I mean Ferdinand.
Ferdinand, right?
Ferdinand the Beetle. So sorry,
I don't know which
Furkel.
one is which, honestly. The other one's
before Furkel hit the track, but this is the Beetle, and they were surprised that the tiny vet was not just keeping up but passing them. So we had a good time on track driving. They were surprised about how quick the car was going. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good question. That's a funny one.
Okay. Is there a brand of car, or any car in specific that you'd like to wipe away from history? Could be a model, could be one specific car.
To wipe away from history?
Could be no.
I have to think about that one. It's probably something like
Aztec.
Right, I would race the hell out of an Aztec.
Oh, we're not saying we wouldn't race it. We're just saying,
Can we race it with the tent on it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I do have one. BMW 3 Series.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because then every race that we do would be more interesting, right?
This would be true.
For sure. I'm sitting next to the one I'm about spending tens of thousands of dollars to build, and I still agree with you.
It's like every damn race is like half 3 Series. Like, if we don't have 3 Series, imagine all the other cool cars that people would bring to a racetrack.
That's true.
But also, imagine how fewer people would come if they didn't have that easy button. So I don't know. It's a trade-off.
Yeah, there would be a different easy button.
You're right. I'm just simping for the one car I love.
maybe that, you get rid of those E30s and it just becomes 90% Miatas, and maybe we don't want that either.
So
maybe I got another one. I would get rid of the RX-7s. They're just too loud. They're too damn fucking loud.
That's too much.
It's just too loud. They're too damn loud. Every time they go by, it just breaks my eardrums, and I just wish for a quieter car. That's all.
Are there a bunch of those racing out there?
What?
Have
Yeah,
you got
they-
a bunch of those still racing on the West Coast? We
oh,
don't see them out
absolutely.
here on the East Coast.
Oh
at all.
no, they're
Yeah.
out here in Lucky Dog there and Lemons. Yeah, there's some really good teams that run fast and clean. They're really good teams. I just wish they would have different pipes on them.
You just wish that they'd LS swap it. It's the only car you wish would get LS swapped, right?
Yeah.
Just go away.
Yeah, nobody out here is racing those at all. I've never seen them on the East Coast.
There's successful teams out here. There's a couple of really good teams. Yeah, pro teams.
That's good. Yeah, I remember that from being out there. There was a couple of good second gen teams and a couple of at least good first gen teams too.
Yeah, some of the first ones. Yeah.
So, what is your favorite track so far?
That is actually pretty easy to say. I've driven a lot of tracks in real life and like a bazillion tracks online, and my favorite of all of them is Thunderhill West, which
Not
is
the,
the one that's
not
right
the
here.
big track, just west.
No, the little one. The little one. I would
It's
take
really
that
good.
over just about any other track anywhere. In the world of simulation, I like really short tracks. I don't like long tracks necessarily. There's things like Brands Hatch and the Indy configuration that I really like. And there's some really cool tracks, like Palmer was kind of a cool twisty track in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know. I like twistier tracks. I don't like high speed tracks. I like Watkins Glen. I never want to race there again. I think it's the most boring track in the world. I can't unless I've got unless I have like 250 horsepower. It's just boring. Like if you're in a Miata, it's like you just fall asleep on every straight. There's like no point in being there. And
even some of those turns are a big enough scale at Watkins Glen that even if you're maxed out in the Miata, you're still just kind of like, just kind of hanging out.
Like,
You're right. I agree.
It's not interesting, but there are some really twisty courses I like twisty and hilly. The hillier and twistier it is, the more fun it is. There's this course.
You need to come drive AMP.
Well, there's this course that my brother has really close to him. It's called Pineview Run. It's this little country club that this guy, Todd, he made this, I forgot his name, Todd Milton, maybe. He made this course, a country club course in upstate New York. And it's this tiny, like 1.1 mile course with 15 corners on it that is like a second and third. You can't even get into fourth gear ever. Second and third. It's in fact, it's just from corners that are first gear corners, to be honest. And that thing is so dang twisty and so hilly. It's just ridiculously fun. I only got to drive it one time, but it was a blast. So
yeah, I've seen videos from Mario driving that place. It looks like a real hoot. Like I would go nuts in there.
The only thing it'd be better is if it was covered in dirt, and then that'd be
yeah.
That's got to be close to us. We should go there.
It's near Syracuse. It's in the Onondaga Hills area.
It's not far.
Yeah,
2 hours.
Where are you located?
How do you get
near
into
Scranton? Near Scranton.
Oh yeah.
Do you have to be a member or something to go to it?
They have some non-member. There are memberships, but there's also like you can buy a membership that gives you like 10 days there, or you can also go on. There's like different days, non-member days. So
now everybody who's listening to this is like, what's that place called again? Can you say it one more time?
Pineview Run. It's like the best kept secret. If you like to drive your car, like you like driving, like a 20-minute session on that track, it's like, when you're on a go-kart track and you go out there for like 5 or 10 minutes and you're like all beat up. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
It's like a 20-minute session leaves you totally knackered. Whereas like a 20-minute session at Watkins Glen would be like, can I go another hour? It's like, no.
Right.
We went to a go-kart track over by Jennifer's house, and she'd never been on a real go-kart yet. She'd only been on like Disney and stuff. So she was a little surprised with what a real go-kart track was. And the guy was trying to help us out. And he's like, "Hey, there's really nobody here. So why don't we do 30-minute sessions?" And he's sitting there, he's sitting there going like trying to help us out and give us stuff. And I'm sitting in the back of my head going, "No, I don't want to."
I don't think those
I don't think I could get out.
Seem like a lot already.
If I was 30 minutes in a go-kart, I physically couldn't move to get out. I'm sure I'd have like a muscle cramp that prevented me from actually getting out of the car. I'd be just like, I physically can't move.
Yeah,
it's grueling. I don't know how that. No wonder so many kids do it, because it's like it's a kid's game, that one,
for sure.
Yeah.
So, Ian, do you have a favorite turn so far?
A favorite turn?
Yeah, a turn that comes to mind that's like either wow, I really know this one, or wow, I just don't know what to do on this one.
I like my favorite turns are some kind of kink like turn, like something that's less than 90 degrees generally, and usually something that has like some kind of left right component in it, and elevation,
like right after start finish at Thunderhill West kind of thing.
Yeah, turn one there, like something especially like off camber too, like some kind of left right off camber-ish kind of thing would be my favorite turn. Yeah, I don't like banked. I don't want on camber. I don't like corners over 90 degrees. I like things that you have to sort of compromise your something through as well. Yeah.
Do you prefer a decreasing or an increasing radius?
I wish all corners were decreasing radius.
I knew you were going to say that.
I wish all corners are decreasing radius and off camber.
Yes.
You're an evil man. Evil.
So, in your opinion, how much of racing is learned versus how much is natural skill?
I think that, like, if you were to take the answer is actually based on the fact that nobody knows how to drive a car because there's not enough time to learn how to drive one properly. And so because of that, what you're really looking at is, it's like, you could have same question about tennis or basketball. And you say, what matters more? You know, how many years you put into the practicing or your natural talent or something like that. And you could see that, like, there's no way for somebody who's never played tennis before, no matter how naturally gifted they are, to be able to hit a tennis ball and win against somebody who's been playing for 10 years. 10 years always will beat natural talent if you've had 10 years of practice. Now, nobody on a racetrack has 10 years of practice. Everybody is at sort of the point of, I've had 5 weekends of practice. So when you have only 5 weekends of practice, talent wins out. Until you get to the point where it's not just about the talent anymore, and you've moved up a little bit of level, and then it becomes more about your training. And so if you can put in 100 hours, 1,000 hours, if you can do that on a simulator or a skid pad or whatever, you put a lot of hours on, you can then make up for the differences in, like, natural abilities or whatever. I think I'm talking totally out of my ass here. What do I know? I'm not like a performance sports person, but in my opinion, I would say that when the sport gets super, super advanced, okay, we're getting at the very, very top of the level, things like genetics start to really matter. I mean, Michael Phelps having short legs and long arms is part of why he's so great. Okay, he had to be born that way. There's nobody, if he had long legs and short arms, he would not be getting all the records that he has. Okay, and at the very lowest levels, you find some kind of differences like that. But in the middle, there's this sort of like training matters more than anything else. But, you know, everybody having equal training, then the bodies went out, or the brains or whatever. But I think because driving is such at a point that it's so underdeveloped in most people, again, because there's not enough time not to do it any other way. I think you find a lot of people who can be fast without a whole lot of training, because for whatever they innately understand it a little bit better than other people do. And I think the thing that they understand innately is that when you understand it innately is that driving a car should be like skiing. It should be like downhill skiing. Once you understand that all 4 wheels are sliding at all times, and your job is just to manage the balance on the different contact patches, and you're just skiing, and it's no longer like, you know, it's not, the car isn't
thinking. Yeah,
it's not thinking. It's not like this part where it's like, I'm going straight now, I'm turning, I'm straight. It's like it's sliding all the time. Once you're at that level and it becomes just sort of this body visceral kind of thing, I think that the people who understand that get that bodily kind of thing, which is what Ben does. He drives a car very viscerally. He understands that the car is like an extension of his body, drives like an extension of his body. And that's why he's fast. If he used his brain also, he'd be even more dangerous. But
yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. Let's calm down with that kind of talk.
It sounds like a compliment, yet it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have the utmost respect for Ben because he can drive that way. It's like, it's ridiculous. He can go to a track he's never seen before, and he will be immediately, instantaneously fast because he will drive the shit out of the car, and he has incredible confidence in his body and what his body does. He understands what his body does. He doesn't sit around wondering, should I do this? He just does it. You know, it's like full commitment all the time. And I think if you want to be fast, you need two things. You need commitment, and you also need skill. And if you have all commitment and no skill.
And bravery.
Yeah, that's what that meant. By bravery, I mean commitment. Like if you've got that full bravery, full commitment, full confidence, and you have no skill to back it up, you're just going to wreck. If you go the other way and you've got like all this skill and no confidence, it's just kind of a shame to watch people drive around like, you know, at half speed. It's like, it's not dangerous, but it's just sort of like, well, you can drive faster. But then when you can match the two of those things and you can push them all the way, the higher and higher up they go, it's better. It's like, I think that's where the speed comes from, is when you got both of those things going for you, the knowledge and the confidence. And Ben has,
I have to kind of qualify
unlimited
what you just said
confidence.
about me, though.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, I've always had no problem with the confidence. But when I showed up to the world of endurance racing, like when I first met Ian and these guys, I had already been doing kart racing competitively, starting 10 years before I met those guys. And then in between that, I had done a ton of HPDE track driving and then eventually instructing. So I had through the fact that I was kind of poor, but couldn't do much more than get to a track day maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But during all those years that I did that, I got a lot of time on track. And then by the time I was instructing, I got a ton of time on track because it doesn't cost anything to go do a track weekend for the most part if you're instructing. So I built up a ton of seat time and a ton of just time building muscle memory and getting used to how things are going outside of the heat of competition. So by the time I showed up to do endurance racing, I seemed probably more impressive than I was, just because I'd already been doing all this stuff forever.
Yeah, but
most people who are starting endurance racing.
But I can point to another person who's had just as much experience as you, and you guys you'll go to a new track, and at a new track, you will be faster. You will almost always be faster than the next person in a new track, because you trust your senses more than the other people do. You trust your feelings and your abilities, and you have, you've matched your skill and confidence levels in a way that other people generally have not. And so when it comes down to going to a new track or racing in traffic or racing in the rain, there's a lot of people who become really hesitant. The confidence part of it, or to drive 100 miles an hour through a corner, is very different than to drive 40 miles an hour through a corner. And all of these little things, rain, high speed, whatever, unfamiliar track, stuff like that, they lower people's confidence and make them drive really, really slowly. And then that's there's a big difference between the people who can drive confidently and the people who can't. And I think part of the reasons is a natural thing.
Yeah, I guess so. But I guess also I just wanted to also just keep saying that one of the reasons I was so informed by what I could get away with that MR2, when I showed up there, that MR2, the front end was slinging all over the track. One of the reasons I knew what I was going to be able to get away with was I calibrated a lot of that through so much track driving. But I'll also take a compliment that there might be some natural genetics going on. But I had also done a ton of practicing of upset conditions and knowing what kind of wacky shit I could probably get away with in these types of corners, just from a lot of reference thing.
Right. But I'm not just saying that you have, yes, I know that you had that skill, but there's other people who have that skill, but there's not a lot, everybody who will be throw themselves into a corner. You can watch the way you drive. Like we were talking earlier about what do you notice when you're watching people drive? You can watch the way you drive. What way you turn the steering wheel is different from a lot of other people. You're aggressive with the steering wheel. You're trying to make the car slide. That's your goal on the corner entry is initiating the car to slide. That is not most people's. I break people down into 3 different levels of skill level, which is C, B, and A. So if your wheels just start to slide, you can just hear that noise. It's just they're just starting to squeal. The C drivers back off. They're like, oh, I don't want my wheels to squeal. And if they can start to feel it sliding, they back off. The B drivers, they get to this point where it's sliding and they're like, oh, let's maintain that slide. Let's keep it going, keep it going. And then there's the A drivers who are when it starts to sliding, they drive it harder. Right? They drive it even harder because the actual optimal grip is even deeper into the slip angle than the B drivers think it is. And that takes confidence. And it's to do that on a wet track at 100 miles an hour in traffic is a very, very different thing than to do it at 40 miles an hour in a dry track all by yourself. And that's the confidence, the thing that I'm talking about, that some people don't have the confidence in their skills. They may have the skills, but they don't actually have the confidence in the skills to pull that off. And that's what I think separates some of the drivers. And that's part of what I think is in that natural kind of part ability, is that they some people naturally don't give a shit about their own safety.
It's true. That's true. I can agree with that. I naturally do not care what happens that much. I mean, I got a pretty good idea what I can either get away with, and I genuinely don't care what's going to happen that much. Because also, for the most part, what we're doing out there is relatively low speed, and it's not going to be that consequential. We're using good safety gear, and I know how to mostly keep the car on the track, even if I'm doing some wacky little corrections as I go.
Yeah, but a lot of people will not feel that safe. They'll be, as soon as if they get above 60 miles an hour, they start to become a different driver. They're completely different at 40 and 80, right? And it's And I think that the only way to get over that, I think, is when you can try and bluff your way over that and say, "Oh, I'm going to become confident. I'm just gonna grit my teeth and do it." But then you're not having that relaxed kind of flow kind of moment where your actual skills are operating. I think part of that is you have to keep driving and driving and driving on a slippery surface in order to get the feeling into your body. It's like, yeah, I do know how to do that. You can't think it. It's got to be automatic. Once you get to the point where you can control the car automatically and you don't think about the car anymore, then it makes things so much easier. If you ever have to think about the car, it's like dangerous, because then you're spending time thinking about the car instead of thinking about the stuff that's happening around you. So you just gotta, and I think it's hours. Like you had those hours on the go-kart track and the dirt or whatever else, but you got to the point where, and for me, it's sim racing, where I get to the point where I don't think about driving the car. I just think about where I want it to go, and my muscles just take over automatically. And once you get to that point, I think then you can have the confidence that is matched to the driving skill, and you can drive in whatever the conditions are, 100 miles an hour through the rain in traffic, and you'll be fine. And then you don't slow down to 40.
Yeah, I have fun with it.
You do.
Me too. Like for me, that's the best thing in the world. Like I actually want to, like the only thing that's better, if I'm going to quote myself, I would say, like I love other people's quotes, but I have one quote for myself, which is, the only thing that's better than driving the limit is to drive well beyond it and then return safely.
Yeah.
Sounds like Ben's t-shirt.
Yeah, a brief trespass and safe return from beyond, right? Like driving the limit's cool. It's great. Like, yeah, I love it. But those moments when you just spent like, oh shit, and then you're like, oh shit. And then you recover from it and you're like, I trusted my skills and my skills got me out of it. It's like, it's the best feeling in the world.
You came back a little smarter and together, right?
Yeah, and that's what ends up like. Why do we drive a car on a track? Because I want that feeling to happen again and again and again, and so I keep pushing it again and again. So like the whole time around, if I'm driving on a rainy track, I get to experience that thrill of I'm just over the limit and I brought it back. I just over a bit, and you do it over and over and over again. It's addictive, and that's I think the thing that keeps us doing it.
I'm always preaching that about when I talk about rain driving. I'm always like, because it's so fun to fight for how much you're going to how much grip you can have in turn one this time, and then the next time it's going to be different. I'm like, I can't wait. It's like opening a present and getting to that turn the next time, because it's going to be slightly different, and I get to fight for it again. I love that.
Exactly. We're on the same page about this.
Yeah, we're weird though.
It's not the safest way to live life, I don't think. And I think in many ways in my life, I'm actually a pretty safe person. I do a lot of things safely, and maybe that's one of the reasons I like car racing, is it gives me an opportunity to do something that's a little bit riskier. I don't know.
In a pretty controlled setting.
In a controlled setting. I wouldn't do anything really risky, like do that in a public street.
Sure.
Right.
All right. So I've got 3 magical abilities.
Okay.
One of them is I can take you and you can hear a song for the first time. What song would you want to hear for the first time ever again?
Sour Times by Portishead.
Okay.
Cool. I like Portishead. I'm going to check that out.
Sour Times? It's like almost sounds like James Bond music. Trip hop in the James Bond sort of way of doing it.
I know the group, not the song, but I will be looking. Okay, so
I'm Googling it.
I'm sure.
Sour Times by Portishead.
Okay. If I could do the same thing where you could see a movie for the first time, what movie would you want to see again for the first time?
I got to go back to the 80s. It's going to be, something from that time, maybe Aliens or Terminator or something like that.
Okay. And then what if you could drive a track for the first time ever again? What would the track be?
Well, I'm going to go back with my Thunderhill West.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a special. We did get to drive it for one of the very first time was ever driven. It was very special to be able to drive a track that nobody's ever driven before, and we were like one of the first groups on it. And it was very special, and I would love to revisit that.
Ben,
it was a very cool feeling to get on that track for like what were we the first or maybe the first or second group to ever go on there? That's so wild to see. You kind of set your own line a little bit. You're like, hey, the line is where I find it. It's really cool to not have a reference at all to go to.
We had no idea. It was so cool. Yeah, there's a new course at Buttonwillow, so that's going to happen really soon. They just made a new course. Yeah, so
So Ben, when we had you on, we never got to ask those. What do you think? Movie, song?
Black Dog by Led Zeppelin.
Nice.
Movie, one of the Police Academy movies. Anyone? I would just like to watch them as an adult again and kind of catch some more references. And I want to hear that guy make all those noises with his mouth. That's cool. And track. I mean, my frame of reference of always is the track I've always lived so close to is VIR. And I would love to go hit it for the first time again. Again, whether I knew all this stuff I know now or not, I would just love to go drive that track again. I would love to go drive it tomorrow, knowing all the stuff I know now and having been there a million times. I would go there every day of my life if I had like FU money.
So to the surprise of absolutely no one, Ben chose VIR.
But the straight's too damn long. It needs to be in like the south or north or grand configuration. That straight
but that's when you check Twitter. That's when you check Twitter. You catch up on your E's. It's cool. It's no big deal. It's a multitasking kind of course, so I'm down with it. I've always been cool there.
Excellent.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I definitely want to do hog pen. The hog pen could be my favorite corner I've never driven in real life, but I have a feeling like if I drove that would be my favorite corner on the track.
What the hell is going on with us in our adult life where you haven't come and stayed at my house and gone and run VR? We got to figure that out next year or in the next couple of years. We're gonna do it.
Hog pen is seriously calling to me. That is like
hog pen is what you wish. Hog pen is what what's the thing at Laguna? The hog pen is what the corkscrew should be. Hog pen is like
corkscrew
so much more rewarding.
Corkscrew sucks. I mean, what happens after rainy is much better than corkscrew. But
1,000%.
Hog pen looks like to me like the most fun corner that I can imagine.
Yeah, that's where the bacon is made.
Very cool, Vicki.
What are you currently working on for the upcoming race season?
I'm trying to build a wing on the Yaris that would be cockpit adjustable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like a slider or like a clicker, like a click or a slide, just
like a second handbrake that you activate from inside the cockpit.
Okay, so you just hike the wing up like one motion.
You can like set it right where you want it, like like you can flatten out of the straights or yank it up to air brake or whatever else.
Are we talking about just the angle or does it slide forward? Because the sprint car wings go up and slide forward. I think like the big adjustable sprint car wings.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that. But maybe I need to have two different adjustments.
You do realize the car goes 90 miles an hour. There's not a whole lot of air.
Well, after you put this wing on there, you have no idea how fast it could be once you put a wing up there.
I know it might go 85 now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I can dream, though, man. I can dream.
All right, that's fine.
Planning to make a wing on a car that goes like 95 miles. It's a great idea. Yeah.
Because
the nitrous kit is also going to help.
We know when we think Yaris, we think aerodynamics. So,
I mean, yeah, clearly.
Miss Jen.
So, Ian, how do we keep in contact with you, or how does one follow you?
Well, there's my blog. That's where I put my race reports and whatever brain dump that I'm doing. So usuckatRacing.wordpress.com. That's where you find stuff out about me. But if you want to find out other stuff about me, you can always like, what other stuff would you want to find out about me? Like, you want to like work with me, like do research on like bioinformatics?
You're a really interesting person. Like I said, there's many layers to you.
Like an ogre. Okay. Or a young.
Like you want to talk about genetic algorithms or something? Then fine, cool. Let's hang out. I'm cool with that too.
Okay. All right, we'll be on Instagram Live an hour after this podcast post talking about genetic algorithms. Okay, sounds like a plan. So far be it from me, the person who has to edit all these podcasts, not to take advantage of this. Let's go to our second ever live Dominating with Dawson.
Oh wow, that's exciting!
I don't have to edit it in; it's here. Wait, Vicki, I need a race car sound. Very good. All right, thank you.
Great one.
All right, that's awesome. We're going to need one at the end. So Jennifer, you're the one at the end. So okay. So with Ben and his assistant Ian, we had a question that someone wrote in and said, "I've got video of me driving in the car. What should I be looking at when I'm reviewing my driving video?"
Ooh, good one.
Interesting question.
I would want to know whether or not you could see the driver in the video. Do you have any frame of reference? Because I am
You
always
can
watching the driver.
you can see the driver inputs. You can't see the footwell too well, but let's just a normal
Right.
back window shooting through. Any thoughts? Any?
What do you look for? What do you look for when you see somebody driving? See somebody's video, Ian?
Well, I think I identify what level driver they are, and
Yeah.
that's where I start with. And so things that I look for there is, are they driving fast enough that they need to make steering corrections or not? I mean, that's like,
Right.
it's like if they're not driving fast enough that they have to use steering corrections, then I'm looking for things like signs that they're over braking or they're too tense, or like, watch their hands and see if they're gripping too tightly. I look to see if their hands are like, if they're like doing weird stuff with the steering wheel, like ending up with both hands at the top of the steering wheel at the same time.
Right.
I'm looking basically for weird stuff that are things like that might be quick fixes to try or get the person to not have these bad habits that they already have. That's probably it. But if they're already if they're having to make steering corrections, I'm looking at the magnitude of those kinds of things and trying to think about things like, are the magnitude of the corrections correct for the kind of speed and corner and yaw that they have, or are they doing
Right.
too much? Or are they like overdriving the car, or are they trying to do it? Are they doing a reasonably good job or whatever, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just usually a casual observer, just because I'm watching video, just to watch and think, is the person doing it the same way I would or not? And usually, if they're deviating from what I deem as my perfect approach, then I start kind of critiquing them too. But yeah, like you, I'm kind of watching to see what level they're at, at which level they're driving, and sort of go from there. But if I'm watching my own driving, I'm just trying to watch it to see how, to see if I'm making timely choices in traffic, and to make sure that I'm not being lazy with my driving, and make it, for instance, if I'm referencing my own driving, I might look at sort of how I'm doing at the beginning of the video versus the end, and make sure I'm not falling off or doing something different at the beginning or the end. I don't really know. Usually I just watch my videos just for like the spank bank quality. I just kind of watch like, look how good this guy is. But I mean, so I'm usually most critical of other people's stuff. I'm just kind of watching like, I would break in a different spot, or I would do something slightly different. But usually people aren't asking me for much constructive feedback. So usually this is all just happening in my head when I'm watching somebody's video.
I also usually look for like shifting technique to see if like how
Yeah.
the person shifts. Yeah. Like, are they actually heel toe shifting, or are they doing the fake heel toe shifting where like they let the revs drop and then they spin them back up, or they pull a clutch out? What's their hand technique on the shifter? Do they like, palm outward on the fourth gear change or not, or stuff like that? It's just like, I don't know. There's like a handful of stuff that I look for, just like to try and identify sort of how do I picture this person in the sort of in the spectrum of driving. And then after that, I sort of, or maybe at the same time, I'm also thinking about the little different things that they might improve or something like that. Some people I watch and I don't even think about it. I just enjoy watching them. And you're just like, wow, this person's just like, what a driver, and I'm just like in awe of their abilities. There's some people who are just really great drivers. And it's actually those videos, I generally just close them right away. I was like, that guy's so much better than me. I'll never be that good. I'll just like turn it off.
I like there's guys like, there's a guy who used to be a Porsche factory racer. His name's like Lee Keen, like LEHKEEN.
Yep.
Is a great driver to go watch. You go watch his videos, you're like, well, I just can't imagine anybody doing it any better. And it's really fun. It's really fun to watch. We go watch him drive at night in the rain in Lamar or stuff like that. I kind of watch those videos like that, and I'm just in awe. But unlike Ian, I just keep watching them because I don't worry about it. But I guess you're right though. You're talking about, at least when I'm watching videos, sort of I categorize where the driver is sort of in the strata of driver skill, and then sort of see within that subset, are they doing where I would expect them to do, or there's some kind of if something's off, I'm going to notice, right? I'll definitely notice if somebody's doing something off or weird.
Yeah, I tend to watch like the videos I keep watching of the people who are in the middle. Like if they're really terrible drivers, I can't really watch them, and if they're really great drivers, I also don't watch them.
So Vicki and Jennifer, you have a few videos now up on the Garage Heroes YouTube channel. What do you guys do, or do you even look at the videos of you driving, and what are you looking for? What are you thinking about when you're taking a peek, and how do you use them, or do you not?
I look at my hand positions, and because sometimes when I'm in the zone, I sometimes get a little lazy. That's one of the things I look at first. I try to actually look at how I'm hitting apexes.
So line
And
stuff.
huh?
So your line and everything.
I'm looking at my line, and then because right now I'm trying to stitch together my apexes and then my speed after, and then I'd actually try to see how I exited it, the apex, and make sure like whether my shifting was proper going into it, because sometimes I get lazy and I realize that's an area where I mess up a lot. So I try to pick out those little areas of how my placements and my inputs were before I hit that apex.
So input sequencing kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Because sometimes I forget, and then I realize after the fact that I really screwed that up just because my sequencing was off. So.
Okay. Miss Jen, have you had a chance to look at your videos yet?
And I think
besides the one I play every
depends.
time we're on the podcast.
Every one you play, yeah, that one I've seen probably more than any of them. So I think when I look at the videos, mostly for like the HPDs, because that's when we record them.
Mm-hmm.
It depends what videos I'm looking at, because there's different skills I've learned
Mm-hmm.
or gotten better at with different ones. So that's mostly I look at the lines. Most recently it's the shifting. Yeah, but probably, yeah, the lines mostly, and entering turns and coming out of a turn. But again, like most recently, the shifting has been big for me this year with the HPDE. So yeah, most recently I've been looking at that, I guess.
So I think it would be great if every car had like those, like you could do the overlays of data and you could see the brake position, and the throttle position, the RPMs, like that. If you have that in your car, that would be amazing, because I feel like even if it wasn't overlaid on the video, if you just had a light on the dashboard that showed when the brake was on and the brake was off, like just add an auxiliary brake, when you're braking, when your brakes are on, brakes are off, kind of thing, that could actually be really useful. Even just that, when your brake lights are on, it's like, because that's something you can't really see very well on a video. And so it's like,
we're trying to add that for next season. It's one of my projects, but we're not quite there yet. We first got to get the GoPro to be turned on when we start driving and off when we stop, as opposed to the vice versa, because that doesn't work so well. So
if you get a memory card that's big enough, you can just run it all day and you never
just let it run. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We still run those Russian dash cams you put us on to, Ian.
Yeah.
Those Mobius. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All day, baby.
Yeah. So Miss Jennifer, Miss Vicki, do you look at your older videos versus your newer videos? Do you see any differences?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I don't go back to look at them.
There's no going back. There's no value to your earlier stuff. Right?
I moved on.
Yeah. I actually saw mine recently. I was quite humiliated.
Oh, but don't be humiliated. We all come from there. Like everybody. Like you should have seen my first track video. I spun the car on track. Yeah, it was like
I was driving my car like I was driving to Target.
She had the gangster lean.
I was chilling in the seat. Had my
left.
I had my
left
one
arm
hand
up.
on top of the steering wheel, the other one like on the shifter. I'm like, boom.
Yeah.
Heading out. I just need a stereo
You'll find
going.
the top of the rev range. Yeah, you'll find the top of that rev range eventually.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do you like that Hulk shifter knob so much? Because you just won't let go of it.
It's terrible.
I've actually was watching some of my video recently, and I realized how much of the nowadays, I drive a lot of the track one-handed. Like I used to say you should never do that, but like, oh my God, I can't believe how much of the track I drive one-handed. That's kind of, even in the rain, I do it. I just drive around one-handed just because it's like, sometimes I feel like if you're doing certain types of drills, like doing skid pad drills, if you're doing stuff that's over 180-degree corners, your arms get in the way, which is not a problem. Like you can work on your hand over hand technique, but you can't just keep them at 9 and 3. But in addition to working on your hand and shuffle steering, you should also work on your one-handed driving. So that's one of the things I actually practice when I go to a skid pad, is I will spend a certain amount of time doing just left hand only steering and right hand only steering, and working both left and right hand corners just with one hand, and also shuffle steering. And I actually work on those different hand positions. Not to say that most of the time I'm at 9 and 3, but I want to have all the other ones in my sort of pocket at the same time.
For when things get too quick.
Yeah. And a lot of times, especially when you're trying to do like oversteer recovery, you're actually more coordinated a lot of times with one hand on the steering wheel than having two. Coordinating just one hand to do those kind of very subtle motions sometimes is actually better than having two. For me anyway, I feel like I get a more natural feedback from that.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to get a flurry of other racers going, no. I can feel it now.
Well, remember also Ian saying he practices all those things to be ready for upset conditions, and the most time he's driving the normal way.
Oh, I thought you were talking about people watching your videos saying, no, don't do that. Oh, so. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna look at mine. I look back on my videos and I'm just like, where's the line? There, I had no concept there was a line at the time. You know,
you were exploring the space. That's what
I was exploring the space. It was terrible.
You should explore the space. I think that's what I tell all of my students all the time. Every time they drive off the line, I'm just like, you're exploring the space. You're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you don't drive offline, you don't learn the why where the line is. Like you have to drive over it and around it and stuff like that before you really appreciate it.
So the three hosts, not counting Ben, that are here, our first ever track days were Vicki and mine were at New Jersey Motorsports Park in a race, and Jennifer's was at Thompson in a race. Nice. But we added extra complexity to Jennifer in that she'd never driven a stick before. So we lent her a car after teaching her for about an hour. We lent her a car for 3 or 4 days, and then she came to the race. So Jennifer's not exactly exemplary.
Christened by fire.
Yeah,
but way to go. You did it, and you're still here.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I went to work and one of my coworkers is like, oh yeah, I learned to drive a stick, don't go downtown. And I'm like,
at 140 cars in the rain on a racetrack.
I learned on a racetrack. And I got to say that I love that Lemons allows you to do that. I mean, they've made this like racing entry, and I hope that people appreciate that. And they don't like, there's a lot of people who are like real racers and they just want to make it all about racing, but it shouldn't. It should be like, let's open it up and have everybody have fun. Yeah. The top 10% of the cars, you guys race each other and make sure that that's, you're doing it safely, but the rest of us, let's have our party, Yep.
I agree. I will always love Lemons for that. And I will always race with Lemons because of that.
Yeah.
It's very accessible.
Yeah. Lucky Dog is the same way. They definitely, they're all about like, it's like Lucky Dog. The difference between Lucky Dog and the Lemons is like the Lucky Dog cars are cleaner, in general.
Yeah.
Not the ones we've rented so far, but
it's a lot of the same people involved.
For sure.
Yeah. And all the series, honestly, they're all really similar to each other.
Okay, so slightly shifting subjects, but watching Ben's eyes explode because I'm going to ask him a question that I already know his answer. So there was a recent internet. I know it's hard to imagine that there's a kerfluffle on internet, but there was a recent internet kerfluffle over banning slow cars like Miatas, etc., from HPDEs because they're too slow and they're slowing everybody down. And Ben and I have already talked about this. So Ian, do you have any Mr. Yaris, do you have any
I would say I don't really care about HPDs. I mean, honestly, like the whole HPD culture is all completely done incorrectly. It's like, let's drive super fast cars that we have that are and sticky tires, and the people have absolutely no idea how to control them. If you really actually want to learn how to drive a car, you got to go the other way. It's like there's a reason Kenny Roberts, school is dirt bikes on, it's on dirt track, is because you learn stuff like you want to get the muscle memory, you do it on a slippery surface at low speeds. That's the way you actually learn car control. All this stuff that they're doing at HPD is not learning about cars. It's just some kind of like, I've got a really fast car and I bought it and I bought my speed. But if you actually, so I don't really give a crap about that. But to me, it's like
a little bit of jam it and slam it, right?
Yeah. And you can drive it fast that way. And that's not how you drive fast. That's not how you learn. Like if you actually want to get good at driving, you should drive a slow car and you should drive it in slippery conditions. So everybody, if you really want to drive a car, get a Miata and drive it in all season tires. And that would be that's my, like, in fact, if I had a racing series, which of course will never happen, I would just have the entire series on all season tires. Everybody has to be on. I don't care how much horsepower you bring, because 700 horsepower on all season tires sucks. In fact, it's terrible. In fact, nobody would want to do it. Like And so I would just make, and so it simplifies the rules. It's like, you know what, everybody's on 500 treadwear tires, and we'll just, let's make
We
it
have
about
we have the spec Walmart, whatever they are, the General Prowler ironware. Yeah,
Douglas extra track 2s. We've raced with those. We put those on our car. We did it one year. I was like, what's this one time? I was like, all right, guys, we're going to put these Douglas extra track 2s on our car. Just bear with it one race. And we went out there, and everybody to a person on the team, when it started, they were like, do we really want to do this? And afterwards, like, we're doing that every time from now on.
I was so mad I missed that. That was right after I left California. I did that. I was like, God, these guys have all the fun when I leave.
Yeah, and it's like from now on, that's all we do. We always race on Douglas extra track tires. Like the braking zones were like twice as long. Literally, you had to brake like twice as. It took so long to slow down, and like your tires are like squealing around, everywhere. It was insane. There was no grip at all, and yet we're still going around the outside of people, in the corners.
So Ben, we talked about this. You were quite unhappy with the idea. Do you want to expand upon it, or are we just going to say this? No.
I just thought it was weird to hear the idea of people talking. Like, I think WRL is getting rid of their slowest class. Like, GT4 is just disappearing, partly because it was undersubscribed. I mean, partly also because I think they want to kind of move their speed window up to accommodate people showing up with, factory GT4, GT, maybe GT3 race cars, but TCR kind of stuff showing up. I mean, so series like AER and WRL are kind of getting faster overall, and it sounds like some people are ready to just kind of ditch the slower equipment that might show up, and it was a real surprise. And it wasn't that surprised to hear it about WRL, but I was a little surprised to hear even the idea being brought up about DE events, because also imagine if you bounce a bunch of those kind of strata level of cars out as far as speed, you're going to lose a bunch of your instructors too. Like, if I still had my Miata, and it was like no Miatas in this group, I would be like, well, I'm not coming. So, I mean, and instructors are a pretty important component of HPDE driving and racing, or driving, in those kind of events. So I would be worried about losing some instructors too, but it's weird altogether just to include somebody just based off the assumption that they're going to slow everybody else down. In my experience in a Miata is at a track event, is usually I'm getting slowed down by somebody who's got like 3 or 4 times as much horsepower as I do. The whole thing sounded bizarre to me.
This is the real reason. It's because they're getting tired about like bringing a C7 being embarrassed by an NA6. I mean, that's what it comes
or
down.
A Yaris.
It's like Yaris getting lapped by a car with 100 horsepower when you've got like 400. That's the real reason to ban the slow cars.
Well, the
Yaris ate my lunch, and I'm so sad. Yaris ate my lunch, and I'm so sad.
The stated reason that was in the post that started this whole thing was they weren't getting point buys fast enough by the slower cars, and they should be banned.
Well, anybody going to a track event or HPDE should understand that you get a point buy when the other person who paid the same amount of money you did is comfortable giving you one. Like the whole idea of this entitlement about point buys is another reason that HPDE culture is just something to stay away from. But if people can just be cool about point buys and understand that I'm gonna give you one when I can get to it, I'm gonna get my student to give you one when they actually are not gonna die by sticking their hand out the window. I mean, it's so crazy. Like that's a whole different deal. Never mind. But anyway, yeah.
But Ben,
that's all I have to say about that.
Ben, they bought their performance.
But Ben,
it's so funny. Like, I always have to remind people, like, hey, that person you're mad at spent the same amount of money to be here you did. Like,
they didn't.
Be cool
they didn't
about
though,
this.
because the car they bought was like $60,000, and the car you brought, the Miata, was only $2,000 because you bought it on Craigslist.
Yeah, because I'm 3/5 of a driver. I'm 3/5 of a person at a track day in that kind of circumstance. No, I understand that kind of thinking. Yes, it's out there. It's out there. There's a Missouri Compromise mindset for some people.
But Ben, you're forgetting the two main reasons why this is an issue. One, the scouts that are watching me drive at the HPDE event, and the trophy, the hardware that I'm going to win from winning the HPDE for the weekend, because
you're keeping me from my pro drive that I could have just gotten. Yeah, exactly. I could have had this trophy. Yeah.
That's right.
Track days are so useful. Like, they're so useful for like feeding our sport. But then again, in some ways, there's so many things about it where if you've been racing for a while, you look back at track day culture, and I do all the time because I go instruct to try to get free time to test our race cars. And sometimes so much about track day culture, you're like,
it's so nice, Ben, that you're so concerned about your students. It's like, I have to go to the
No,
coaching test my track car.
it's 100% true that I'm only there to test track cars. Another 100% fact is people ask for me months in advance if they know I'm coming. So I must be doing something okay.
I know.
But yes,
I
am
completely.
the worst. I'm the worst. I'm the worst motivation for ever showing up to a track event. But once I'm there, I'm really there.
I am exactly the same way, 100%. Like when I am actually in that position of being a coach, I am 100% being a coach at that person. But the only reason I went really to do it was because I wanted to fuck around the skid pad for an hour.
Right. Or I just need to make sure this car is going to work at the next race I'm trying to go to is usually our circumstance.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Ian, you may have written a book about sucking at racing, but you do not suck as a podcast guest.
Thanks.
We'd like to thank you for coming on. We hope you had a good time in spite of Ben showing up, but we can't control certain things.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to probably follow up with you with the book thing.
Oh, that's not a problem. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer, I forgot. I need a car vroom vroom sound.
Vroom.
Okay, very good. All right.
I was
Jennifer,
hoping something more two-strokey, but
I was hoping something that didn't sound like a vacuum cleaner, but that's okay. We'll take it.
The best I could do.
All right, very well.
Can Ben give us a two-stroke sound?
Ben, two-stroke it.
I was thinking more on the line of the
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I flubbed it. Botched it.
Banging off that rev limiter. Okay. Very well. Thank you. That was great.
All right, guys.
Have a great night.
See you all later.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. We have no set time, so we just go until Jen
Until
falls
fatigue
asleep,
sets in.
or
All right.
see where the pillow is right now. It's about a little bit below her ear. As the podcast goes, the pillow will get lower. I mean, yeah, she just So
Yeah, she'll
True.
start
So
high,
true.
and next thing you know,
I'm like,
you're only going to
I'm
see
early.
her literally from her nose up.
yeah, that's true.
By the end of
It's like an hourglass. You just see her head sinking into the sofa. It's awesome.
That is so true.
All right, very well. Let's give it a run.
All right.